This budget hearing conducted by the Committee on Appropriation and Adjudication will now reconvene with the Guam Visitors Bureau. We want to thank everyone for your presence here today. As we continue the budget process for fiscal year 2019, we face overwhelming challenges due to the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017, the impact on the government of Guam's revenue stream. Given such austere times, we've found it prudent that the Committee on Appropriations have a different tone and approach to budget hearings. The continued implication that past patterns of appropriation levels will no longer be taken as a given. Prior to this hearing, I sent a letter to each agency present today asking you to provide testimony answering specific questions relative to your agency's missions, how you measure the achievement of your mission, and the other relevant matters. In prior fiscal years, the committee had taken an incremental budget approach and had requested your agency to justify an additional funding above your existing funding level. For this fiscal year, we are engaging in what I loosely term zero-based budgeting approach, which does not start with the prior year's fiscal year funding levels to justify next year's funding year levels. Rather, we take a deep look into each agency's budgets from the ground up. Given the likelihood of decreased revenues from which to fund government services for our people, we must take a closer look at each and every agency of this government and not be bound by what we have already provided in the past. Some may have Googled zero-based budgeting and found that there is no true consequence in which consensus on which ZBB is operationalized. I want to clarify to everyone that the zero-based budgeting approach the committee intends on taking is more of a shift in mindset. When we continue this budget process, the public should be aware that what was provided for in the past is not what the committee will be solely basing decisions on the future. The committee is doing everything it can to show the people of Guam that we are committing to a ground-up approach because the current fiscal environment calls for it. With that said, I'd like to introduce those with me this morning, the Vice Speaker, Therese Turlahi, Senator Morrison, Senator Uggan, Senator Lee, and your Oversight Chair, Senator Rodriguez. With that, I will defer to, is it you, Mr. Tonight, or is the Chairman speaking? Oh, no, the Chairman's not here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Our Chairman, Milton Morinaga, is off island, as well as our Vice Chairman, Monty Mesa. So if I can, maybe I can first of all say half a day, Speaker Cruz, Vice Speaker Terlahi, our Tourism Committee Chairperson, Dennis Rodriguez, and all the committee members. Thank you for this opportunity. Let me start by introducing our board members here with us today. We have our Chairman of, our acting Chairperson as the Treasurer of the Guam Visitors Bureau, Mr. Sam Shinohara, to my right. And then the Chairperson for our Japan Marketing Committee, Mr. Bill Nault, is here with us at the table today. Thank you, Bill. And then to my left, I have my team here. Next to me is Vice President Tony Munya. To his left is our Acting Research Administrator, Mr. Nico. And to his left is Pilar Leguana, our Director of Global Marketing. So let me get started, sir, by first, once again, thanking you for this opportunity to present the Guam Visitors Bureau's FY19 budget request. So FY17 was another record year for Guam tourism with 1.56 million visitor arrivals welcome to our island for the first time in our history. However, FY18 has been a challenging year for our #1 industry because of the negative effects of the North Korean news, plus the reduction of seat capacity from Japan, including Delta Airlines, altogether pulling out of the entire Micronesia region. But despite all these challenges, that Guam's tourism has definitely shown its resiliency. Currently, fiscal year to date, we are just 3.7% less than last year's record arrival number. And so we outperformed our original forecasts at the beginning of this fiscal year of minus 10% decreases. So I think this result is thanks to the private and public sectors really coming together and working together. And I would like to thank this legislature for your continued support of tourism. Without the resources you have provided GVB and the industry, this recovery wouldn't have been possible. However, yet there is still much work to be done. F19, I believe, will be a critical year for Guam's tourism industry. And I strongly believe that if, with the full support of the legislature to GVB's budget request, FY19 could be another record year and will be another record year for the Guam Visitors Bureau and for Guam tourism. Before I get started, and I have a very short 50-slide presentation as usual, I'd like to share the details of GVB's budget request. Let me explain a little bit about the Guam Visitors Bureau. Of course, we're a non-profit public membership corporation, and our board is very diverse, made up of 5 appointees from the governor, but one of those is from the Mayor's Council, appoints 1. The legislature, this body, appoints 3 of our directors. Then our membership votes and selects 4, and then the board as a whole selects the 13th member. So you can see we have a very diverse board that really advocates for the best ideas and what's going to work for everyone. So I think I'm very proud of that. Then our board is very active. We meet twice a month. I think it's the most meetings a month for any board. So we keep our board members very busy. And then the board, on top of that, we have 11 different committees within GVB that handle each of the different areas of responsibility. For example, we have a Japan Marketing Committee, a Korean Marketing Committee, Greater China Marketing Committee. Then on the destination side, we have Visitor Safety and Satisfaction, Destination Development and Maintenance. So we have Culture Committee. So our committees are then made up of people, our membership that are interested in those different sections. So the Japan Committee will be made up of people from the Japan tourism industry. Our Visitor Safety and Satisfaction Committee is made up of many from the public sector. So I think our committees are very well attended, and we appreciate the time that everyone spends to contribute to our tourism industry through these committees. So what happens when the budget, our staff will put together the budget for each of those sections, which I'll be presenting to you today. But then those are run by the committees in their meetings, and they meet monthly. And each committee is headed by a board of director. Once the committee approves that budget, goes through and scrutinizes it, and we appreciate the speaker's idea this year to really look at zero-based budgeting. It's something that GVB has been doing year on year. So we will set up our SMART goals. For those committees, we'll set up our KPIs, key performance indicators, and the committees will go through and prioritize that budget and put the budget together. Then that goes to the board as a whole to vote on, further review the budgets, and then that is what the staff puts together and then presents here today. So if I can go to the PowerPoint, I come from a very much a video background, so I always like to put a video in front of my presentation. So I think they have the guys in the back have the video queued up. So this is a video we did with Beautiful Destinations, the #1 content provider for Instagram for destination videos. So we worked together with them. We launched this about 2-3 weeks ago and have I think already millions of views on this video. So. All right, so that's a partnership with Beautiful Destinations, so that video is online and has gone viral, so we're quite happy of the work we've been doing. And I have a PowerPoint going to be queued up in a second, and then I'll get started with going into the details. in the interest of time, I'll just start with our presentation. So my first slide will just be about the organization of Guam Visitors Bureau. I mentioned we are a public nonprofit membership corporation. Our overall mission as a bureau is to really make Guam a better place to live, work, and visit, and this is a message that we bring in everything we do. I'm quite proud of our team at the Guam Visitors Bureau. Year after year, we continue to win awards both here on island and overseas. I think we just, in the paper, there was an announcement that we won Best Booth at the Russian show, the Russian travel show in Vladivostok. So we continue to, I think, perform well and bring home the hardware for the island of Guam. On a personal note, I was honored to be recognized as the Guam Young Professional of the Year, and I mentioned this not to brag about myself, but to brag about my team, because the performance of my team, all the hardworking people you see behind me from our Guam Visitors Bureau, working on weekends, working in evenings. You know, tourism is a tough industry. I speak to a lot of kids at the high schools, and I say that, you know, it's a great industry, but you know, when people are celebrating their holidays, you're working. And that's very true for us at the Guam Visitors Bureau. So I'd like to thank my team for all their hard work and efforts. And without them, I don't think the industry would be where we're at today. And at the same time, I'd like to thank the industry. I see Sam and Bill, and you know, they hire thousands of people in the industry, and they're working just as hard. So I think together, everyone working together is really what makes tourism work for Guam. Okay, next slide. I'd like to start at the very high level with the tourism satellite account. So the TSA is a standard developed by the UN WTO to measure tourism. So as we know, tourism encompasses not just, there's so many different industries involved in tourism. So UN WTO really wanted to come up with a standard to help measure tourism that could provide an apple-to-apple comparison on tourism when you measure it. And so we started doing this report, we call the TSA report, every 5 years. But the information that you get from it, I think, is so important to policymakers such as yourself. So we started doing it on an annual basis. So we did one in 2010, 2015. Now we did one in 2016. We're working on doing the 2017, but of course, those numbers are dependent on getting the numbers from labor and revenue tax. So we're starting that process now. So I'll show you the 2016 numbers, but they should be relatively the same as 2017. Actually, 2017 should be a little bit better since we had a little bit better year in 2017. So next is the tourism impact highlights. So you can see visitor spending grew 8.5% in 2016 versus 2015. Visitor spending supported $2.5 billion in business sales on Guam. This is a number we really look at is the jobs. 21,100 jobs, or 34%, 1 out of every 3 jobs on Guam is associated with tourism. And it's providing $216 million. And including indirect and induced impacts, tourism on Guam generated $260 million in taxes last year. Next slide will show some of the visitors trends. I'll go quickly on the slides since I have so many, and I want to get to have enough time for questions for everyone. So you can see the growth in our total visitor arrivals, with last year being 1.5 million. And since 2009, we're seeing nearly 500,000, 500,000 visitor increase from the lows seen in 2009, and 40% of that increase happened in just the last 3 years. And that growth in arrivals has also seen a growth in visitor spending. So you can see visitor spending now surpassing $1.75 billion. That was a $140 million increase over the previous year. And visitor spending has been on the rise since 2012. With a brief pause in growth in 2013. As I mentioned about the jobs, here's a breakdown of all the jobs, or 34% of all employment in Guam is related to tourism. So this is a breakdown between the direct, indirect, and induced jobs. And next, now we want to talk about a little bit comparing GVB's budget compared to some of these growths in these key areas, these key performance areas for the people of Guam. So you can see in 2010, GVB's budget was around a little bit over 12 million. There was 14,000 jobs. In 2016, as I mentioned, 21,100 jobs. Our budget is at about 23 million that year. So you can see, thank you very much to this body for the increase in our budget, but I think at the same time we've been able to increase the number of jobs on Guam. Tourism tax generation, of course, tax is a very hot issue and generating taxes for the government of Guam. We're proud of the nearly 260 million in direct and indirect taxes generated by tourism in 2016. In the absence of these taxes provided by tourism, every Guam household would have to pay over $5,000 to maintain the current level of government services. So to put it, to kind of summarize, for every dollar given to GVB, you want to talk about ROI, $11.17 is returned in government revenue. Okay, a little bit back on the slides there, Sydney. Okay, I told you I'm going to go quick, so let's do this. Guam visitor arrivals, 2015 to 2019. You can see our 2016 we were 1.37 million. 2016, a record year, 1.51 million. 2017, we got that up to 1.56 million, the all-time record. This year, we're tracking, as I said, a little bit about 4%, negative 4% versus last year, which I think with the slow start we had to this year and some of the challenges is a very good number. Next year, we're projecting 1.53 million visitors, which would be more than our record in 2016, a little bit less than 2017, but I'll get into a little bit more of the details. This number is really dependent on air seat capacity, especially from Japan. So if we can get that air seats, I feel very confident in this number, and this number may even go up. Tourist and attraction fund collections, as you can see, have been growing quite a lot, substantially in the last years. 2015, we were at 36.6 million. 2016 broke the 40 million mark for the first time, and 2017 record collections at 44 million. This year, the tracking is looking at around 41 million, and we think next year we can get it back on track and get closer to 42 million. And now I'd like to talk about GVB's budget request. You can see at the bottom, I have it broken down by the major sections, but at the bottom you can look at the total. So 2016 and 17, we were right around 22.3 million. Last year, thank you very much, we were able to have 23.8 million in funding, which was really helpful in, as I said, really combating the negative effects of the North Korea news. This year, our request is 26.33 million. Last year, our budget request was 27.5 million. So overall, the committees really work to generate the budgets, the things that they need to do, the resources they need to be successful for each of their sections, and then we compile that and then present that to the committee as a whole. I did inform my team, definitely looking at the current situation in the government to be, we have to ultra scrutinize every dollar that we're spending and make sure it's justified and tied to some performance. And so this is the number that we've worked together. So I'll go into each of the different each of the different departments in more detail. But as a whole, you could see for FY 2019 at the 42 million projection, the section of GVB's portion of the TAF total, the total tourist and attraction fund would be 62.5%. Hot bond would be 16.6%, and there would still be about 21% left over to fund other areas of the government. Okay, the next slide is the GVB budget percentage of total. So we broke it into our major sections. So you can see marketing is the majority of our budget at 65.6%, research and destination at 20.7%, and I like to focus on the admin. So total admin costs of the Guam Visitors Bureau is only 13.7%, so quite low. You could see most of our funding is going into marketing, going into product development, going into research. So we're trying to be as lean as possible when it comes to administering these funds. And on the next slide, you can see a little bit more in detail our request for administration. So you can see the last 2 years, we got 3.6 million in funding for the administration. This year, I talked to my team. We actually, Mr. Speaker, we submitted 3.8 million for our administration budget. But as you said, we went back with the team, and I felt like in the current environment, if you could really stick with 3.6, although it's hard, with increases in increments in salary and COLA and other benefits too. But let's try to see if we can keep to the 3.6. So we went back and I worked with my team, and we were able to, we would like to revise our request on the admin to stay at the 3.6 million that we got last year. And I'm really proud of my admin team. This year we received our 8th consecutive clean audit. Our our Director of Finance, Ms. Rose Cunliffe, is not here today, so I'd like to thank her. And I think we have Lisa Linick as the Acting Controller. Thank them for all their work on the admin side. Next, we go into marketing for Japan. And you can see within our increase versus last year, a big chunk of that, about 750,000, is coming specifically for Japan. So as we all know, Japan arrivals have been decreasing. We did a presentation to this body, to the tourism committee under our oversight chair, Dennis Rodriguez. Thank you for that opportunity to brief specifically on some of the trends in Japan. So I'll try to keep it a little bit short here since we just had that about a month ago. But the main focus, if you go to the next slide, the 750,000, that entire increase will go to further increasing the amount of support we're offering to airlines to get more air seats into the market. And I'll go a little bit more into detail about the air supply. So, next slide. So you can see for calendar year 17, we had about 2.2 million, at the far left at the bottom, 2.24 million seats in the market total. In calendar year 2018, we were at 1.9 million. And so we lost quite a few seats. But if you go up to the top, and then we have it also placed fiscal year 2017, 18, 2.2 million and 2 million. But at the top, you can see the numbers for Japan. If you go fiscal year 2017, we were at close to 900,000 seats in the market. Fiscal year 2018, we're at 670,000 seats in the market. So that's your capacity. So people, when they come to Guam, they have to fly here. So the total number of the seats really is the limit to how many visitors we can get. With 667,000 seats, we're not going to get 1 million Japanese visitors. It's just not possible for them to get here. So a big focus the last 3 years as part of our efforts in Japan has really to work with our current air carriers like United, our hometown carrier, as well as other carriers, the Japan Airlines, T-Ways, and then also reach out to new carriers. So we're doing this through 2 different programs, and I'd like to share these programs with you. So one program we started, so 2 years ago we had about 100 charter flights from Japan. Last year we started our Japan Charter Support Program, and then we're continuing it on to this year. So how this program works is we offer a marketing support amount of 2,000 yen, which is about $20 per seat, to the travel agent. So what's happening is, because there's not enough seats in the market, especially at the busy time like summertime or the New Year's time, the travel agents themselves are basically chartering a whole airplane and then flying it to Guam, selling it and then flying it. But they have to guarantee the entire flight. So that's a big investment on their part. I mean, every charter flight could be, they're spending at least maybe 150,000 per flight to get that flight here. And if that seat is empty, they have to take that risk. And so we're not funding the whole flight, we're just helping them market that flight. So we're providing some marketing funds to make sure the flight is full. So if we take that $20 per seat, we'll call it about $4,000 per flight. And for the year, this year to date, we have about 195 charter flights we already happened this year. And this year we're looking at probably having 350 charter flights this year. And as I mentioned, 2 years ago we were at 100. Last year we were at 200. So 350 will be quite a big increase. And so 33,000 charter flights have already come to Guam as part of this program. And so seats. Those are the seats on the plane. So 33,000 extra seats to Guam. And so if you look at the total economic impact, we did the breakdown at the bottom. Every flight is roughly 187 pax, at each person spending $1,400. This is Japanese spending. You would see about 266,000 in spending of economic impact per flight. So if you times that by the number 195 charter flights, you're getting close to 47 million in economic impact. So we think quite a good return on investment for this program. The next program I kind of want to focus on is the regular service. So charter flights are great, but charter flights are just temporary, usually during the busy time, usually with the travel agent. So for the airlines, to attract new airlines, we have a program to incentivize direct, regular scheduled service. And so the first kind of airline to take part of this program was the Japan Airlines. So Japan Airlines on March 25th of this year started a second flight from Narita to Guam for the summer schedule. So this will be throughout October. And so we provided a $500,000 marketing support, which they're using to market this flight schedule. This will bring in over 43,000 additional passengers. And if you take that number, say the flights were full, I think they're not full, but they're quite full, at 14,000 per passenger, that would be over 60 million in economic impact. So I think quite a good return on investment. And just to further expand about JAL, because of they're a Japanese carrier and they have so many Japanese people part of their mileage program and working with the travel agents, they've done a really good job to help us market our destination with this investment that we provided. So actually, just last night, Tony and I were working on the presentation, and we got news that another airline finally, we've been meeting with Jeju Airlines to fly from, they were interested in flying from Japan to Guam. Currently, T-Wave flies from Osaka to Guam. T-Wave is a Korean low-cost carrier. Jeju Airline got the rights from the Japanese government to fly what's called the Fifth Freedom rights to fly to Guam. And so they just announced their service between Osaka and Guam last night. And so this is something we've been discussing with them, working with them, together with the airport. So I have to mention the airport. We have been working really hard with the airport and courting efforts to court and help our existing airlines as well as incentivize new airlines. So they came out with a revised rate structure for airlines flying from Japan to really lower the cost to all the airlines currently flying to Japan and future airlines flying to Japan. So I'd like to really thank Airport for their support and partnership. And so we're really proud of this additional service, and we will continue to, we have some other airlines that we're talking to, and hopefully we'll get additional service in the upcoming year if we have the funds to continue these programs. And the next slide, I'd like to share, we always talk about arrivals, and arrivals is, of course, a key performance indicator, the volume we need to look at, and we need to get those, butts in seats and heads in beds to come to Guam. But we also have to look also on the spending that each visitor and the different visitor markets are providing. So I think those two KPIs are important to look at in a holistic way, because Pilar will always tell you that it's important to get the numbers, but you also want to get the yield behind those numbers as much as possible. So if you look at Japan, Japan is one of the higher spending markets in the world. You could see for 2018, although the arrivals is 525, the average spend did go up to over $1,400. So the total economic impact is about $750 million from Japan. Next, let's talk a little bit about Korea, which has been a real star for us and growing year on year for the last 5-6 years. A lot of that driven by additional airlines from Korea. Our goal packs for next year, we're looking at 780,000 Korean arrivals. We want to continue to fill up all those flights we have. We have 6 airlines flying from Korea. We have airlines flying from Incheon, but we also have airlines flying from Busan and also Daegu. So right now our team is really working with the industry and trying to market not just to the Seoul area and the Busan area, but also to the other areas of Korea that we haven't yet marketed to. And I'd just like to share this next slide. This just happened this weekend, but this is over at the Incheon Pools, and we had 4 artists from Korea here. And thank you to my team, Pilar, Colleen, and Keisha. They work with Judy Flores. So this Korean artist came and painted the diving board at Incheon Pools with the cocoa bird. And we had worked with this artist to do an art exhibit in Korea. So I was happy to bring her to Guam. There are these 4 artists from Korea to work on this thing. And I just don't know why we never painted this thing earlier. So, but the other thing with the Korean market, I'd just like to explain that when we talk about the different markets and the spend, it's some markets spend more than others, but all the markets provide different spending to different areas of the community. So I don't want to, just because spend is different or lower doesn't mean that market isn't valued to the community. I would say, for example, like the Korean market, very much a FIT market. That means they're very free to travel around the island. A lot of them, and they rent cars and can drive on the same side of the road, so it's easy for them to. For example, I got an email from Jeff from Jeff's Pirates Cove from Jeff Pleadwell saying he hasn't had this amount of traffic at his business ever, But it's easy for the Koreans to get a car and drive down there. Whereas, so that spending is helping him, but with the Japanese market hurting, and Bill could really chime in on this. A lot of the big or a lot of our transportation companies that have those buses are really hurting that, they don't have the groups that they have. So it's really important, when we talk about different markets, yes, of course we're going to compare and look at them, but to me, they're all good. It's kind of like when you catch a fish, so you might like tuna, you might like mahi, but we're going to eat both fish. We're not going to throw one away, and we're going to be happy with all the fish we catch, but we just have to kind of be aware of it and manage that process. So I just wanted to share that I think in some of the news reports when we talked about spending, we don't want to offend any Korean visitors. We're very happy for the business. We want to give them the best service possible. And so, when we say the Russian market spends more than the Japanese, doesn't mean we don't want more Japanese, or the Chinese market spends more than the Japanese market. So I just want to make that very clear to everyone in the community. And so the next slide will show the Korean economic impact and just the rise in the impact. So you can see, of course, the arrivals, 2016, 519,000 arrivals. 2018, we're looking at 750,000 arrivals. The spend, and we are watching it, has dropped a bit. As we get more repeaters, people get a little bit smarter in how they spend money and a little bit more discerning with what they choose to do. But the total economic impact is about 700 million. So you can see Japan, less arrivals, total economic impact still a little bit higher, but Korea really becoming almost even with the Japanese as far as the total economic impact. Okay, the next couple slides are going to go into the kind of the smaller markets. So I'll try to pick it up and breeze through so we have time for questions. But I think these are all important markets. The main goal with Taiwan is we did lose this service from EVA Air. It was a twice daily service. They had some reorganization within their airline, but we were able to pick up a fifth flight. We have 4 times a week on China Airlines. Now we have 5 times a week starting in March, and we're hoping to make sure we support that flight. And if it's full, we're hoping to go daily with China Airlines, a great partner, and Taiwan is a great market for Guam. Next up in China, I think the GoPax number is wrong here, right? I think it's supposed to be 15,000. Apologize. So with China, we're kind of really invested heavily in China the last couple of years, building up Guam's brand. Of course, China is the largest visitor source market in the world, the number 1 spending visitor source market in the world. So everyone in every destination needs to be in China and building in China in the future. So I think the work we've done in China has really done that. We did lose some direct service from China, but we have reevaluated our China strategy when it comes to air service development. And what we realized is we really have to focus on working directly with the airports and the government, and then the airlines will follow. So we just came up with a new strategy, and we're excited to launch that in the coming fiscal year. On the flip side, though, we are seeing many Chinese coming on their own through what we call free independent travelers. A lot of them are transiting through Korea, through Incheon with Korean Airlines, working very closely with them. They have great service to China, and we're looking to also work with our other airlines to get more Chinese. Narita is a great connection for United for China. So I think we've done a lot of good work, and we're building the Guam brand in China. But at the $1 million, that's quite frankly a very small budget for China. But we're trying to make sure that we spend it very wisely. Another key point we've been working on is with OTAs in China, the online travel agents like C-Trip, and so that's been real successful for us. Hong Kong, we have our goal packs for next year is right around 7,000. Now we have just the direct service with United 4 times a week, so we continue to promote in Hong Kong. It's a small budget as far as the total marketing budget is concerned, but it is important that we continue to promote that flight and that service. Russia, we're seeing an increase in Russian visitors. We're keeping the budget at 250,000 for now, but we are seeing more Russian visitors. I think with the ruble, it's all dependent on the ruble exchange to the dollar. You can remember at one time we had close to 20,000 Russian visitors, and we were able to have direct service from Russia. But with the ruble going from 30 to the dollar to 70 to the dollar, really made it expensive for Guam. But in the meantime, we have great service once again with Korean Air to to Russia, to Vladivostok, to Khabarovsk. And then now Jeju Air is also flying from Incheon to Vladivostok. And so we're working with them, as well as Asiana flies to those cities. And then we have Air Seoul flying from Incheon, which is their partner airline or their low-cost carrier. So we're having more connectivity with some of these Korean airlines, and so that's helping us with our Russian visitors. I think Philippines is a great market where we've been kind of slowly increasing the budget and being more active in the Philippines. Typically I think in Guam we kind of think of Philippines as a lower end market, but quite frankly, they call it the AB higher end market of the Philippines. They travel globally, and they have lots of disposable income, and they have U.S. visas. So this is the market that we're appealing to in the Korean market. But the great thing about, Philippines, but the great thing about Philippines is all the flight service we have. We have United flying daily. We have Philippine Airlines flying daily. We have Cebu Pacific doing 3 times a week. So a lot of the traffic to the Philippines is Guam to the Philippines, but that means there's seats coming this way. So we need to continue to promote. And I think we've seen big gains in the number of Filipinos coming to Guam. I think typically we were at like 2-3 years ago, we were getting about 10,000. Now we're seeing 20,000, and I think we can push that number up a bit more. So North America, like you can see we do market in North America. We get about, it's a big number, we get about 70, almost close to 72,000 arrivals from North America and Hawaii. Our goal next year is to work with at least 5 new USA travel wholesalers, dive wholesalers, and MICE. Those are group buyers to actively sell our Guam products. And then we also want to target and organize a trade fam, meaning bring people to Guam from North America in FY19, from the LGBT niche, from the adventure niche, from the dive, and from the MICE planners. So really bring them here to experience our destination so that they can go out and sell Guam. Next up is our marketing budget, also quite a small budget for Pacific. And what we do with our Pacific budget is really use this to work together with our regional partners in Micronesia under the PATA Micronesia chapter. And so, for example, we just came from a dive show and we work with Palau and all the different islands of Micronesia for the Pacific, and to promote Guam as a regional hub of the Pacific and Micronesia. And so we continue to do this work with this section here. Next up is branding. So branding is a big part of what we do at GVB, and has really helped us, I think, to reach the brand awareness that we're reaching. So branding has a couple of different targets and things that we focus on. Our number 1 program in branding is the Hafuday Pledge, which I think has been really a fantastic program. We're now up to 800 members, and we're looking to getting it to 900 next year. But the program is getting even deeper, offering more resources to those members to incorporate the Chamorro culture into their everyday businesses or organizations. The other program that we launched that's been quite successful is the Tourism Works program. So we really want to educate the community about the benefits of tourism and how it works for the community. But this program has been great because we've been able to focus on a lot of the small businesses that are providing, or the individuals providing, working in tourism, and getting them more exposure. And then the next 2 are kind of the global aspects of the branding, and how do we promote Guam as a global brand. So that's our online branding. So we showed you the beautiful destination. So that's part of our online branding and our global branding messaging. And this year our theme was Instaguam. And so very much tying into social media and promoting Guam as the best place for an instant vacation, since we're only 3, 4, 5 hours away from our source markets. And then we want people to instantly share their experience on the island through social media. And so the launch of Instagram has been fantastic. The video that we launched the program with kind of beat out all the other videos that we have done for our annual campaign. So the team was and the markets were so excited about this campaign. They want to continue it for 2019, so we're not going to change next year. We're going to keep the Instagram theme going. Next up for marketing is social media. So you can see we're just asking for the same amount in social media. Just some key highlights, I won't go over everything, is that now we're up to over 550 million fans and followers on all our different digital platforms. We are doing more digital marketing, so we put that out to all of our different markets, whether that's Japan or Korea. We really want to move to doing more things digitally, and that's really been successful for us. We tied up with TripAdvisor and did work with TripAdvisor. The last thing is mobile. Of course, we have our signature mobile campaign is the Shop Guam app, and that's been fantastic in promoting our local businesses. And that app is available in 6 different languages. So, whether if you're a Russian and you come to Guam, you download the app, you'll be able to see the offers in your native language. We also added a beacon notification. So as you're walking around, if your Bluetooth is on, you would get a notice that, hey, there's a discount at IHOP or at this different business at Kitchen Lingo, you can have lunch and it's discounted. I just showed this next slide this is the photo we did for Beautiful Destinations. So Beautiful Destinations will be doing several photos and several videos that feature our beautiful island. And so this photo is the first thing they launched, and they had 150 likes on it already and thousands of comments. Tourism research. So we've been pretty consistent on staying at the $600,000 level for our budget request for tourism research. I'd like to thank Nico. He's been the acting research director for I think about a year now, and he's been doing a great job still moving some of the long-term projects we've had in the books and getting them done. So number one would be the customs form. So after, I don't know when the last time the customs form was revised, but we finally did it and went to a smaller customs form. And then we updated the whole system that tracks the customs form. And then next year we're going to launch an online dashboard that people will be able to get the latest stats and figures online and create reports. So that's forthcoming. Next year, some of the interesting research things that we're planning on doing is we wanted to do an economic impact study on our signature events and do surveys on those. We like to also redesign our visitor exit survey as well. Okay, so sports and events. Sports and events is really key for us, and we position our signature events in the slow shoulder periods. Like, for example, April through actually mid-July is a slow time, but these past Aprils have been, we had over 120,000 visitor arrivals last April. This April we had 117,000. 7 years ago, if you had 100,000 arrivals in April, that would be a good April. So you can see, I think a lot of that is tied, I'm looking at Sam, to events like the United Airlines Guam Marathon, so the region's largest event. We just got done with an event, the Cocos Crossing just happened this weekend. We had 50% local, 50% visitors participate in the event in Maritzo, beautiful event. I think we had the 3K winner was someone from Korea. So we're really happy with the work we were doing in the events. What we're trying to do is train our event organizers to get more ahead of the game. Don't let us know, hey, can you help us promote your event? When is it? This weekend. It doesn't work that way. We need time, and I think we've been doing that. And so we have an annual event calendar that we update and hand out to thousands of visitors in all the different markets, as well as online. We can be a little bit more quicker to update, but we want everyone to really start planning their events much further in advance. So this is our this is our events calendar, but you can see we have a lot of signature events. And just for example, if you look at the next slide, if you do the economic impact from the United Airlines Guam Marathon, you could see we had 2,000 international runners come. Runners also, when people come for events, they come with their friends and family, so it's not just them coming alone. So you could look at almost $9 million in economic impact generated by the UGM. Cultural heritage. This is a division I'm really proud of. They do a lot of great work in exposing our culture. You can see all those awards I showed earlier. A lot of those awards are cultural dancers when they go overseas and present at the different travel shows. We're beating out all the other destinations and winning awards for our culture. One of the key programs that we have is the Guam Chamorro Dance Academy, and we continue to expand this program. We were just in the Osaka Travel Expo last weekend, and we didn't okay, I guess this is okay. We didn't bring any local dancers, but we had our Guma in Japan come and perform at the show because now they're so good. They sing in Chamorro, they dance in Chamorro, and they have about 50 members come, and it's beautiful when you see 4-year-olds all the way up to senior citizens all dancing and singing Chamorro, and these are Japanese citizens. So that was a really, really great event. We continue also to promote the GCD in the States. And why this is important is a lot of these students, they're learning our dances, they're promoting our culture, and then a lot of them are also coming home to Guam. A lot of them have never been home, but this connection with the culture and dance really gives them a reason to come home. And then when we do have events in the States, we're able to tap into them. So we're kind of the same thing we did with FestPac. We're building our cultural factory, or what is it called, our cultural capacity. And I think that's important, and that's something that we're really proud of what we do. This is just, I'm not going to read it, but just a list of the supported organizations and events through this committee. Visitor safety and satisfaction. This is a, did you get the number wrong? I thought you asked for 9. I'm sorry, there is, for FY19, you could see 17 and 18, we asked for 750,000. This year, this number is wrong. We're asking for 950,000 for visitor safety and satisfaction. Please allow me to explain. Is a big chunk of this, close to $500,000 is being spent on the visitor safety officer program, which I think has been a fantastic program that has done so much work in the community. And so we'd like to continue to expand that program a bit more to have a wider coverage and do more things, add more time for them to provide safety for the visitors and the residents as well. And the other program, I actually have slides for these, so I'll go. So this is some of the work from our Visitor Safety and Satisfaction Committee. These are the VSOs. So a lot of the work they do, of course, is their job is to provide directions, take pictures with visitors, offer maps and things like that, but then also provide safety services. But what we're finding is they're going above and beyond. We're finding a lot of homeless people in the Tumon area. And so this is for example, this is a camp in front of Guma Tranquilidad. So they went in, and this is probably the 6th camp they've cleaned up, and you can see all that trash. So they went in and cleaned up this camp, and they're really helping assist and manage, I guess, the homeless situation in Tumon. But at the same time, we expanded to offer more stuff along the beach. So in the upper right, this past weekend, they're providing, they were first responders to this, and I think this was in the paper, to this individual that almost drowned. And, it's hard to put a cost on saving someone's life, but this program, I think, has really gone above and beyond. So I want to make sure that we continue the program. And, with more resources, we can do more with this program. Yeah, the bottom right is, what they should be doing is taking pictures with the visitors and providing them assistance. The next one is, and the increase actually also really helped with this program, because this was a program the legislature gave us extra money for, and this is the Korean Concierge Program. So I think this was 2 years ago, and there was a separate legislation provided some funding. But then in last year's budget, we didn't get the extra money, but we were able to make it work. But we just fear that we won't be able to continue this program without the extra funding in this category. But this is another great program, and I'm showing this Travel Press magazine because this is put together by a Korean gentleman named JP Sho, and I was at the PATA annual summit, and he came up to me with this magazine, and he's like, "This Korean concierge program is genius. The Korean market is growing in so many places, and there's so many free independent traveler Koreans, but so they need additional help, getting directions or with safety issues." But the only thing, he was showing this to like Thailand and all the other competing destinations. So I was teasing him that, "Hey, Mr. Sho, don't give away all our secrets. Why did you put this in here?" So, but this is a really good program, and I think this has also helped. So many Korean visitors that have had issues here on Guam, and they go on above and beyond providing those services. Next up is destination maintenance, and so you could see FY16 and 17 we were around 1.24 million. Last year the number was 1.085, and this year we're asking for 1.3 million. And the increase, the next slide, the increase in this dollar amount will really go directly to grass cutting on the roads. So when we had that cut in the budget last year, we had to cut several routes. One of them, like in Dedido, we don't cut the grass in the medians in Dedido, and you can see the overgrowth on some of I think these are Marine Drive roads. So, the sidewalk is not passable in some areas, and it just doesn't look nice. So if we're able to get those funds back, we can restore some of the grass cutting and some of the routes that we had to decrease the amount of. Okay, last slide. So this is our capital improvement project. So our destination management committee, it's made up of public and private sector. Monty Mesa is the chairman this year, but GVB is happy to step up our efforts. If we get the funding, we'll go above and beyond and do things like capital improvement projects. We just finally finished all the lights in Tumon. So that was an extra appropriation that legislature gave to us a couple years ago. We have done sidewalk work, but we are asking for $1 million for this year. We didn't get any CIP budget the last 3 years. I mention it every single year. There are serious improvements that need to be made to pedestrian infrastructure. So we have a list here: crosswalk surface repairs at the following intersections, pedestrian lighting improvement. A major one that we wanted to work on is the Payless to Sheraton Road. The thing is full of potholes. There's no sidewalk, so people are swerving like this, and people are walking the side of the road with no lights. You got to also understand in that one of the things we see more of is more visitors staying at bed and breakfasts or vacation rentals, especially in the Tumuning area, right? So there's a lot in that area, so they'll be walking on the street with their, in a not safe, not lit area. So we just need one bad thing to happen, and a lot of PR would happen. But more than that, I'd like to do it for our local residents. They deserve to have, a road that's safe to walk on and a road that's safe to drive on with lights. So the majority of that $1 million will directly go to sidewalks, crosswalks, and lighting in our tourism district. Okay, Susan Smasi, thank you for bearing with me as I went through this presentation. I did meet with the speaker, and he said to be very thorough in my presentation and justify all of our categories. So I took a little bit more time than I'd like to do normally, but I appreciate the time. And I'm here with our team and the board, so we're open to any questions that the committee may have. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. I also note that Senator Espaldon joined us. Thank you very much for the presentation, and you addressed a number of the issues that I had presented to you, and I think in full disclosure and transparency from my colleagues, when we met last week and asked about the preparation for today, the reason why I wanted to meet with you guys was to talk to you about the fact that 20 years ago, and I presented to you, was a study that our office had done, and that 20 years ago, in 1997, we did reach the $1.4 million visitor arrival. And that year, the appropriation was only $13 million. Though we're at 1.4 million still, thereabouts, or 5, we're now up to 23, and we're asking for 26 million. So we're doubling the amount, but it wasn't translating into a major increase in the visitor arrival. I pointed out the fact that TAF was increasing because in 1997 the weighted room rate was $104, and today, as I understand it, the weighted room rate is $207. So it's doubled, and the increase is more the increase in the 11% on the TAF than it is on the visitor arrival. And so I'm glad that you, at least for everybody else, tried to explain why that happened. I have a number of questions, but let me just go back to your presentation. On page 12 and 13, you have the Japan economic impact and the Korea economic impact. And in there, you go through that whole thing of the average spend per visitor. But very tiny on the bottom, it says prepaid and on island.
Mm-hmm.
I keep getting phone calls that I should ask the question, how much is prepaid and never seen here as opposed to on-island expenditure?
That's a great question, Mr. Speaker. So prepaid is, it depends on how much is prepaid. So prepaid would be like if they bought the package. Okay, well, on island is then they come here and they directly spend on island. So in our survey, we asked them, what did you spend prepaid? What did you spend on island? But the prepaid would also include if they prepaid the hotel in their source market. Eventually, the hotel will get paid, and so a lot of the hotel costs, if that was prepaid, would filter into that prepaid and come back to Guam at some point. The airlines is a slightly different situation. For example, if it's United, because they're based on Guam, a lot more of that dollar amount will filter back into the island. If it's a foreign carrier, a lot of that would stay in the country of the foreign carrier. But at the same time, we do need that flight service and them to come in. So
this amount really is, you're saying this includes the airline ticket?
Yeah, so this would include, prepaid and online would include the airline ticket, the hotels, cost of the hotel, anything they spent on island. We can break it down between, we track prepaid and on island separately, but this is kind of the total spend for them and the total economic impact if we combine both.
Because you use that as a multiplier to get the economic impact, and some of that never showed up on Guam. And the room rate, as I understand it, when it's prepaid, the TAF is not on the 207 room rate. It's on whatever the arrangement is with the hotel for that package, which could conceivably be half that amount. Is that correct? This is just information that I keep getting, and so I just wanted to ask that.
Bill is with the travel industry. Maybe Bill, you want to?
Yes. Good morning. In regards to that question, for prepaid hotel rooms, if a person was to pay $270 in their country, or like in Japan or Korea, and then they will come here, it depends basically on the contract between the hotels and the agency or the business that is selling the hotels in that country. And most of the time, when the $270 is the amount that the hotel has given, then occupancy tax will be based on the $270. If a hotel net rate is in question here, like for example, if the room rate was $250 and is being sold for $270, then the occupancy tax will be paid on the basis of the $250 and not on the $270 from a foreign country, if the amount was being paid in not on Guam, but basically on that country. So, for example, Expedia. If a traveler was to go online in Korea to buy a $200 a night room, in Expedia's case, I believe that most of the hotels charges Expedia on a net rate basis, except for some of the hotels. So when it's paid on a net rate basis, which is pretty much the same as, I would say, if it was an offline agency. When a hotel makes a wholesale contract, because it becomes a wholesale contract, that rate is based on the wholesale rate that is given by the hotel to that agency or the operator. And so now going back to the Expedia, if the rate is $200 given by the hotel to the agency, and Expedia would put a profit onto the $200 and sell it for a $250, the occupancy tax will be calculated based on the $200 amount. And then that whole amount will be collected by the hotel from Expedia and paid to the government of Guam. So basically, yes, occupancy taxes do get paid.
No, I understand that the occupancy tax is paid, but is it paid on the $200 that the hotel is charging tonight, or is it paid on the $101 that you got on Expedia?
Well, basically, the occupancy tax is calculated on the wholesale rate, which is a net rate amount that they have a contract with.
And so it's on the 101.
It's with whatever the amount that the hotel charges to the agency.
No, it's whatever they paid, but that amount was prepaid off island and is never shown up here. The only thing that Guam gets is that $11.
Yes, yes,
per night for 4 nights, so they got $44.
Yes.
But in here, you guys show that the spend rate was, $400, but it really wasn't.
Yes, and the hotel's average rate calculation is basically based on the amount that the hotel charges either the agency or the customers. And so I would say that the average occupancy tax being paid is what is being reported.
I guess
you've confused me even more,
Oh,
but
okay.
at least I got it clear now that I know that that the 10%, the 11% isn't on the $200 daily room rate. It's on the $101 that you got or you paid for the plan, wherever it was, whether it was through your travel agent or through Expedia. I have a number of questions that we wanted to get, try to have an explanation. I'm glad that you decided that you weren't going to ask for the additional personnel, but I was just wondering, you had 3 vacant positions. You're going to forego the 3 vacant positions then?
Yeah, at this time, Mr. Speaker, with the current situation, we also put a freeze on any new hiring right now. So that's where we're at today. I would have to talk to the team about any additional needs, but at this point, we're not planning on hiring right now.
Okay, thank you. And on also, I noticed under administration, there's a 119 miscellaneous for printing and advertising. Then there's a 300,000 for printing in a completely different section.
So specifically, the admin printing budget is for things like our meeting notices, RFP notices. Yeah. So we have it under business cards and newspapers. And then the other printing section for printing and promo, that's for the marketing side of it, for printing brochures or things we need.
So you guys spend $119,000 for printing cards and notices?
No. In administration, you asked about our printing costs for the administration section?
And advertising. Why don't we just have one printing expense so that we know how much is actually being spent on printing as opposed to having it in 2 categories?
All right.
Mr. Speaker, I just talked with Lisa, and the 119,000 is a miscellaneous total as a whole. It's not necessarily just for printing. So that includes dues and memberships, organizations like PATA that we're a part of, staff development, bank charges. So it's operational miscellaneous items.
I think you're going to need to send a breakdown for that because it's a large number, 119,000. There's also your plans for 185,000 for capital outlay for the office, for upgrades.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned earlier, some of that would be taken off because of, and we'll resubmit our admin budget because remember how I said we were going to go. We asked for 3.8 million, and then we were just going to ask for the 3.6, and so I think a big portion of that you're speaking of would go for those office upgrades and things like that.
Okay.
Correct, Lisa?
The problem that we have when you're reviewing your contract is when you give me these overarching miscellaneous, it completely throws me off because then I can't figure out what's in it. Like in the Japan market, you may have reduced the budget 750,000, but then you increase increase in miscellaneous object category by over $1 million. And how are we to understand what that is?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in my presentation, because we were following the kind of the BBMR docs and the classifications, but specifically for the Japan miscellaneous, that 750,000 I mentioned, the increase in the budget is going to the air seat support programs I mentioned. So it gets classified under miscellaneous, which I think is just the area within the budget docs categories where it fit. So that miscellaneous.
But you have a completely different section, 2 million for seat promotion. I specifically remember a section that has 2 million. Yeah, under GVB Japan, there's 2 million for air seat support. Under specifically says air seat support.
Yep.
And then you're saying that this increase of 750 is the air seat support separate from that $2 million air seat support?
No, so the additional 750 is to supplement what we have budgeted. So the total cost for the air seat development support is $2 million. That's inclusive of the increase of 750. So the $2 million that's budgeted or requested here includes the 750,000 increase.
Okay, so that's where it's at. But let's go back to that air seat support. Why don't you explain that? I think I told you guys that I wanted a good explanation of that and the return on investment in that.
Yeah, so basically, we're really trying to, when we meet with the airlines, while I make a great case for the island, how beautiful it is and all this, but anytime a new airline starts new service, there's a risk involved. You're going to be spending, a new airline launches service to Guam, you're going to be spending minimum probably $2 million of losses the first year. And so everyone now is trying to get additional seat service and get airlines to fly their destination because that brings the people. I think you saw the news article about Skymark flying to Saipan, right? And Governor Torres meeting with Skymark to offer them some support. So they're offering marketing support and other support. So so we started the charter seat support campaign to support mainly the travel agents. As I mentioned, we're offering 2,000 yen or $20 per seat to help market those flights. And what we like about that program is if we don't get the result, which is an additional charter seat or charter flight, we don't pay out or we don't support those partners. So as you can see, we've this year I think we spent about 800,000 in charter seat support, and we've had an increase in the number of charter seats. The other program is for but charters are great, but we'd rather have more additional regular scheduled service. And so our plan was to offer money for regular service, 6 months or longer, and this is what we were able to work with Japan Airlines on and provide them that support. So the same thing with the Jeju Airlines. So they are applying for that support money, which will go when they launch their service from Osaka. They need to buy all this equipment. They need to be DOT approved, FAA approved. They need to have what's the machine that they wipe you and they test for bomb. They don't have that, right? They don't need that right now, but they need it to fly to Guam. So these are all the things, ETOPS, the system to fly to Guam. You need to have this safety system called ETOPS. So all these things come into play. So this is this, and then you have to make sure you go out and market the flight and sell the flight. So, you know, our focus with Japan is if we don't have the seats in the market, you know, of course we have to create demand and market our destination. But if people go to and there's not enough seats you're not going to grow. So that's the focus. So we kind of shifted. We put $1 million last year into air seat support. We were able to use all that money, and we saw real direct returns, and the board felt like, hey, let's keep pushing and let's try to raise that to $2 million. And so the increase for our Japan budget is directly going into that air seat support. So those are the two programs that we offer currently. And what's really also
what is the rate of return on that investment? I'm just saying, you spend $2 million in that, but the TAF hasn't gone up by $2 million. In fact, we're losing $2 million this year.
Yeah, but it didn't go down by $6 million. You know.
Okay, and that's what I wanted you guys. Remember when I met with you guys last week? I said you're going to need to explain that. Yeah. That is the impact. You're going to have to explain that impact because that is a substantial amount. That's.
Yeah. So absolutely. So thank you, Mr. Speaker. So for example, we lost all our service from Delta. You know, so we lost 30% of our air seat capacity with Delta exiting all of Micronesia. You know, right now, Saipan has no flights to Japan. They have 0 flights to Japan. So they're out there offering, you know, lots of support to airlines to get more seats. So, for example, like the Japan, as I shared in my presentation, that additional flight that we will provide 43,183 seats. So you can look at our number right now, and if without this flight, you would have 43,000 less Japanese visitors. So that's a direct impact to the arrivals number. These charter flights, you know, although we can't say every charter flight would fly without our support, we're definitely getting more charter flights. You know, 2 years ago we were at 100 charter flights. Last year we were at 200. 2 years ago we were at 100. Last year we were at 200. This year we're already at 195, and we're halfway through the year, and we're looking at 350.
And how much would that 43,000 seats cost us? What would be the impact to the TAFT and the economy if we lost 43,000 people?
Yeah, so I mean, if
those are the figures that I'm trying to understand, because this investment we're making in this is supposed to be bringing us back some, you know, and you touted the increase of what's happening at the hotels, but as I showed, the weighted room rate in 97 was 104. It went up to 112 in 2007, 111 in 2010, 119 in 2011, 199 in 2017, and now you're saying it's up at 207. But I almost got killed a few months ago making the proposal to increase the minimum wage of the employees of the hotel. And their salaries haven't increased proportionally to these weighted room rates, but supposedly tourism works for them.
Mr. Speaker, if I could just add a couple of things. I think specific to Japan, And Guam has been so reliant on that destination for our tourism industry. It is has been, and hopefully someday will resume the #1 ranking in terms of visitors. But it's such a different market today than it was 10 years ago. And Guam is such a different destination for Japan. So previously, Guam was very fortunate in that it was 3.5 hours away, and it's still 3.5 hours away from Japan. That hasn't changed. But in terms of a beach destination, there is so much more competition that Guam has today than it did 10 years ago even. Taiwan, Bali, and some of these other, kind of Asian destinations are really, their spend in the Japan market to promote their destination is much more significant than the $8 million, which is the entirety of our Japan marketing budget.
And I'm just trying
Sure.
to get, Sam, are we spending this just to stay where we're at? Or is it for more?
So I think it's a little bit of both, Mr. Speaker, because certainly we've seen Japanese tourism travelers gravitate towards other destinations. And one of our biggest challenges is trying to convince them to come to Guam versus going somewhere else, or quite frankly staying home, which is a lot of what other people are doing. The challenge that Guam sees today, from my perspective, is our visitation from Japan is down significantly more than outbound travelers from Japan are down. And so I was always comfortable that if Guam continued to manage their fair market share of travelers that were leaving Japan to visit other destinations, then we would be in a good position. But I think over the course of the last 5 years, we've seen that the visitation to Guam is down a bigger number than people that are traveling out of Japan. I hope that makes sense to you. And that's a function.
No, it does,
yeah.
because I understand that the Japanese are doing more traveling within country. PBS just last night had a news story about the fact that tourism in Japan, to Japan, increased. Let's see, it had like 8 million 10 years ago. It's now at 28 million.
Sure.
Inbound tourists. It went up thousands of percent. And so, so I understand that there are beautiful destinations within.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to figure out, with all of the investment that we're making, trying to figure out, with Boracay having closed for 6 months, did we see an increase here? With Hawaii, again in yesterday's news, talking about the fact that the governor is complaining or bemoaning the fact that the volcano has caused their tourism to drop. Are we picking them up? Where are they going if they're... there's two major destinations
Sure.
that we thought that we were competing with, Boracay and Hawaii. Both are closed or down. I'm trying to figure out, have we gone up proportionally, or is everybody just not traveling?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Speaker, there's so much noise in the numbers that you're seeing, and it's a function of so many different scenarios, right, or issues. So, the geopolitical issues, at one juncture, almost shut the entire spigot between Guam and Japan. Almost shut down our industry, and that seems to be coming back a little bit more. And I think in large part, to the efforts that the team, Nate and his team have made, we saw some significant gains and some rebounding in the industry. Mind you, it's not where it was even just, a year ago. And so there's a lot of more work that needs to happen. But because those people decided to go elsewhere, we are now having to double down our efforts to get those people to re-engage in having conversations with us about coming back to Guam. And so it's a lot costlier endeavor for us because it was shut down for a little while. And so now we're having to, number one, get people that stop selling Guam for a couple month long period, and trying to remind them why it is so special to get Japanese to come visit Guam. And so I think the proposition is much more expensive than it was previously for a lot of reasons. And I think in addition to the extra money we spend on Japan, and I know there was a comparison to where the budget was, 10 years or 20 years ago, and the numbers being, the total arrivals being somewhat similar. I'll say that to a certain extent, Nate has become the, kind of the road street repairman, the fireman, the lifeguard, and all of these other things. And I think to a certain extent, some of our budget gets allocated to those things, and all of those things need to get done. And I think the team does a good job, with the resources that we have to do it. But I do think that it's much more expensive for us to do the same things we were doing 20 years ago, for sure. And I think, unfortunately, because of competitive issues, because of the geopolitical concerns, I think we'll be lucky if we get the same number of Japanese arrivals that we had 2 years ago. If we could strive for that number next year, I think we would be very, very fortunate, unfortunately.
And that is the kind of explanation that I wanted to justify what was happening. The problem that I have is that that you and the GVB has been my favorite child. I mean, I've been involved in tourism for 40 years now, tangentially, but really interested in it. But the thing is that we have to explain to the people why there has to be this huge investment, and why, in spite of the fact that with half the amount we had that tourism arrival 20 years ago, and today, as you put it, we're spending as much and getting half as many people coming. And are we just running in place to stay in place? Do we really have to stop and think about reinvesting? I look at your budget for Philippines at $400,000 compared to North America, which is $250,000. But North America brings in 73,000 people a year, according to your chart, and the Philippines brings in barely 20. Should that be rethought? I'm just trying to figure out. For me, it's an issue of return on investment, and I think I explained that to you guys last week when we were meeting. Please come down and explain to me the return on investment on everything that we're investing in, even to what's the return on investment in running ads on Guam and sitting at the theater and seeing Guam Works. What's that for? How much and why?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. All very good questions. Like I mentioned, we have a committee for every market. The U.S. is a bit different because that 73,000, some of that is contract. These are visitors, right? But they could be a contractor coming here for work. They could be coming here for other reasons to visit Guam, visiting friends and relatives. And so, our sweet spot for visitors is that this 5-hour ring around Guam, right? To come to Guam from the U.S. costs, what does it cost, Sam? I don't know. $1,500 to $2,000, right? So when someone's looking at going on a vacation, to come to Guam is quite an investment. That's why we really shifted our focus to visiting friends and relatives, because our local people, there's an attachment to come home and a reason to come home, as well as adventure travelers or people looking at Micronesia as a region. But it's really hard to pinpoint the exact number that is coming as visitors. For the Philippines, I think, the 20,000 is a good number. I mean, at a certain point to have a presence in a market, you need, at that low level, like we're spending 250,000 in a market like Hong Kong or Russia. But to have an office, to have some staff, to do activities, meet with the travel agents, that's kind of the 250 is kind of the the borderline of whether it makes sense to have a presence in that market or not. And so at the 400,000 for the Philippines, you can see we have 20,000 Filipinos, a number I'm quite proud of. We had 10,000 a couple years ago. We have 3 carriers flying from the Philippines, including Cebu Pacific. An airline
Do we still have that contract? There was a contract a few years ago that made the news, and there was a bonus for increasing.
For the Philippines, we don't have any direct arrival, direct monies paid on arrivals for the Philippines. We did some of that for China when we had the...
Did that contract expire?
What contract specifically?
There was someone who got contracted in the Philippines to do promotions for Guam.
Oh, we have an office we have a contractor providing
and does that still include the bonus incentive?
We don't do the bonus incentive for any of the offices currently. Yeah.
Okay, because I thought I remembered that was part of the controversy a few years ago when that contract was
it
was going to be doubled or something.
No. So to me, we do have 3 carriers flying for the Philippines. Of course, they still have to get the visa, but I think it's not as difficult as travelers from the Philippines believe it is. There's kind of a perception that if I apply, it's hard to get the visa. It's really not the case. So we spend time educating the travelers. We provide letters and things like this for when they do their interview. We also promote to MICE groups, whether those are doctors or pharmacists. There's a lot of professionals that want to come to Guam for golf and we find that really shopping has really been resonating in the Philippines. We have such similar cultures, so to promote, the beach or even some of the food is very similar, but we find the shopping has been a real key, unique selling point that's been, so I think going from 10,000 3 years ago to 20,000 Filipino visitors has been a really great success to the team, and the budget hasn't gone up double. We're slowly increasing it to continue to support that market and increase that market. So I think it's important that we support Japan as well, because as we mentioned, we could also look at our brothers and sisters from Saipan. There's only so many source markets around us that can travel to Guam visa-free, that can provide enough volume and enough customers. One is our friends Japan, right?
Okay.
For 50 years.
But when we go through the budget,
yeah.
Though I appreciate the fact that you've broken down each of your committees and your budgets, the problem is that it also masks, there's no, you don't put it all together in an amount at the end, that all of these separate budgets break down this way. Well, like, for example, travel. If we break down each one of the committees, there's a huge increase in GVB travel to each one of those locations for the next fiscal year. Is that imperative?
So for budget purposes, each of the committees will come up with their budget and then determine the trip. These are the shows we want to attend. These are the activities, and then we'll present that to you. It still then needs to go to every travel that we have will go to the GVB board, which is a public meeting, and they would need to approve that travel. A lot of times the board spends a lot of time, and Sam complains about all the time, really scrutinizing each travel and making sure, do we need this many people, or do we need to spend this much? So I think we have a very fiscally responsible board that will scrutinize all the travel as well as management, and so that's for budgeting purposes is what we have for travel. And funny enough, the biggest traveler in the bureau is cultural and heritage. They send the most people, but that's because these are the cultural dancers that go to the different shows, and they're sending between 4 and 6 cultural dancers. But this is important to exposing our culture and bringing people to our booth and performing on the stages that we attend. So.
No, I understand that. Yeah. I'm just trying to figure that with all that broken down travel, it would seem to me that a travel budget with those in it separate in one area, so that I can see without having to go through and, I see the 80,000 for Japan.
Okay.
And I see Korea going up from 73 to 123. Why would you need a 50% increase in travel to Korea when it seems you're almost peaking in Korea already?
Mr. Speaker, yes, I understand what you're saying. So we can provide like a summary of what you're asking for, and my team can provide that to you by the end of the day today, so that you and your office can look at it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just trying to break these things down. I mean, is all that travel absolutely necessary for, to have 80,000 in administrative travel in the office, and then to have 123 for Korea, and then 735 for Taiwan, and 115,000 in travel for the Pacific? And 68 to go to Japan. I mean, all of these different amounts come up to, pretty. Then you take in the cultural. We're nearing $1 million just in travel.
Yeah.
A complete separate amount. I appreciate the different committee breakdowns, but then there should be an aggregate somewhere that says, that's why I don't need to have 4 different printing things. Tell me that there's a printing, and this goes back to this, this goes back to that, because then it makes me dizzy trying to go through it, and I can see all the tabs that the poor vice speaker has in hers, trying to follow, all the different pages, and as you were doing so anyway, at some point, that's going to have to be broken down for us, because
yes, sir, we'll do.
That's a considerable amount, and I think if you can I can justify to myself and to everybody else in the committee the amount for cultural, but how many others need to go when you guys do these trips and just that expense, because that's a fairly large amount. And breaking down the cultural, then you have things where, why is it in sports and events you have the Micronesian Cultural Fair in getting 2 different appropriations? There's one for 100,000, and there's one for 145,000. It's in 2 different sections. There's 100,000 under Guam Micronesian Island Fair, in sports and events, and then there's 145,000 in the culture and heritage budget.
Yeah. So. Before the both committees decided to work together, and so one committee is handling the logistics side of it, like the power, electrical, and then there's cultural committee. Then the cultural committee, for example, sports and events will handle like the logistics of the fair, and then the cultural committee decided to handle more of the programming and that side of it. So they just kind of shared responsibilities on that event, just because it's a cultural event. So.
But that's a $250,000 expenditure.
Yeah.
See, the only thing is again an issue of when all of these things are split up like this, I keep wondering, are we padding, or is this for real? Why do we have 100 here and 145 here? And hope that BJ's one eye won't catch it.
No, not at all. Not at all, sir.
No, I just, it just would make it so much easier for me, and then I wouldn't start doubting if we could just be forthright about, I need this much in travel, $700,000, $800,000 for this, for this, for this, and in just one place that I can see it, so that then I know that that's how much is being spent. I don't want it hidden in miscellaneous. I don't like miscellaneous because I don't know what miscellaneous means.
Mr. Speaker, you sound a little bit like an accountant, which I appreciate because I'm an accountant myself, and I always thought it was just kind of government bureaucracy that required kind of us to bucket it this different way. But if I could give you just one assurance, in that when we approve the expenditures for these sort of events, there is a lot of lively conversation, and we do try to put the sum of the parts together. That said, it is a little bit nerve-wracking to try to add up all the different things, because we would be talking about an event, under, cultural and heritage, and then when we get to the Japan Marketing Committee, talking about a very similar event. Didn't we approve that in cultural and heritage? And then no, it's that this dollar amount's here, this dollar amount's here. So there is a lot of scrutiny and conversation about those sort of things. That said, I think it is a little bit of a mismatch, and maybe some opportunity for us to clean it up.
What I thought I tried to get them to do when I met with them last week, and with the questions that I sent, was to get the explanation that you gave me earlier. I need to have that explained to me. And to the committee, so that we understand why this amount is being appropriated when the visitor arrival hasn't gone up, when the weighted room rate is doubling, and when the ones that are working in the hotels aren't getting anything. I keep trying to figure out who's benefiting.
Well,
when we have the prepaid and the on-island and saying 47 million, there's this huge amount of, you have to make these large numbers, but you don't break down for me the prepaid so that I know that, I really need to, don't use that number if you have that prepaid, because then don't use that as a multiplier and say that all of a sudden you're benefiting us 67 million or whatever the number you guys are claiming. It's nice, but it doesn't engender my confidence.
Understood.
That way.
Understood.
Okay, and so so why don't you explain to me the 600,000 for branding and the 340,000 for social media, because that by itself is almost $1 million, and I'm sure
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the presentation, under branding, it's kind of twofold, and you kind of touched on it earlier. So maybe just back up. In 2010, we launched the Guam brand, our smiley logo, and that came from this branding initiative. And what we were finding was that Guam didn't really have a cohesive brand. Japan market would come up with a campaign, and Guam would be spelled with this font and have this logo, and the next year it would change. It was really generated externally. And through that branding work, what we found is a brand is more than just a logo. You need to have the community. You need to have, tourism only works when the community is behind it and supports it. We can promote Chamorro culture, and they go to the hotel and they watch a Polynesian show. You know what I mean? So that's what the branding initiative started as. So there's two parts to it. There's creating that brand and sharing that with our visitors, but also making sure that we develop that brand and make sure it's consistent and it delivers locally. So that's why you ask, why do we have a half-a-day pledge program? Because people would go to the store and people would be like, what's up, hi, you wouldn't know there's no sense of place that you're on Guam. And you're in Hawaii, people are saying aloha and mahalo, like second nature. So I'm really proud of this program. I think, if you look back to that time before that, I don't think that was the case where people were saying half a day. So we continue to put a lot of resources and time and effort, and the team, we're doing at least, I think, one half-a-day pledge a week. We even have now half-a-day pledge for nannies for kids. So we're trying to get the young people involved in tourism, similar as they did with the WAVE program. So the tourism works, as you mentioned. Why do you go into the theater and see a commercial about tourism? Because tourism only works when there's people that want to become a part of the tourism industry and join tourism. people want to know the benefits of tourism, as I'm trying to explain here today. We talk about the TAF collection and all the taxes provided by tourism. In 1997, we were 80-90% Japanese. We had one source market. The total economy of Guam was based on just Japan. But what were the tourism? The TAF at that time was not what it was today. So I think through the work that we've done to diversify and to brand Guam in these ways and show us as not just a beach destination, as a cheap Hawaii where you couldn't afford to go to Hawaii, so you came to Guam for $300 and spent $300 for airfare and hotel. I think all this work is...
I understand, Nate, but that's $600,000 in the budget. I'm trying to figure out what that's...
Yeah, so we spend it on the Haveli Pledge, we spend it on the tourism works, working in the community. We have for example, we work with KYM, and every Friday we feature a local, someone working in the tourism industry, whether that's a front desk staff, whether that's Bonita Baby that has a shop that's trying to promote to tourists, whether that's Jeff's Pirates Cove. And we use these segments to promote tourism in the community. We also use Tourism Works to talk to schools. So we're going to high schools. We have an excellent LMP, lodging management program that started in GCC and now is in the high school. So we go to Okudu and speak at their school about how tourism works.
But in the budget, that's only $45,000.
Yeah, I mean, these are just... Yeah.
No, I'm trying to explain to me the 600 with Tourism Works, I know is 45,000.
Yeah. So, and then we also have so then that's kind of what we're doing locally to promote. Then we have online branding. And so this is the work that we're trying to do with the Instagram, all that work done to create that campaign is now being homegrown here on Guam. And then we share it with our different offices and coordinate with them. So for example, like on the beautiful destinations, we are coordinating the videos that people come here and this is how we want it to look, this is how we want to express our brand. And then now Japan, Korea, China, okay, this is the launch of this program. You launch it in each of your markets simultaneously on your social media. And so that we have a consistent branding image and everyone's doing things kind of on a global level and not just, okay, Japan has this campaign and they're calling it something, Korea is doing that. And so these are the main things that we do within the branding.
How about social media? That's 340.
Maybe I feel like I'm speaking to Pilar. You want to do the social media? Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Speaker, the social media program is to take the branding elements, the content material that we generate here in Guam and take it to the market. And we use all of the major platforms in all of our key markets, be it Facebook, Instagram, Weibo, WeChat, QQ. In all the markets, they have their own preferred platforms. So we generate the campaign given to us by the branding here and make it market-centric so it could fit into the market and resonate to the consumers. The goal that we have for the social media is to resonate one brand message globally so that when the visitors come here to Guam, they experience the promise that we deliver.
Maybe I just add on.
And earlier, I'm sorry the senator left, but when you were talking about the destination maintenance and the increase, the $1 million that's being requested, I think his question was, how about if we just give that $1 million to Public Works and tell them that these are the things that we want to have done?
The history of that contract, how like when I joined GVB and we found out that we put out the bid to clean the streets, GPW used to pay half of it and we would pay half, and then we had the vendor wasn't getting paid their half, so we ended up taking up the whole contract. So that's how we ended up paying for the road maintenance. And so with the more funding, we would do more roads, and with less funding, we do less. It's as simple as that. So. But
the list that you have up there, Senator Ogden's question, or at least comment to us, was how about if we just gave that $1 million to Public Works to increase their, the governor's road maintenance group that...
with the actual road maintenance part, I mean, the whole $1 million is broken down into the San Vittorious landscaping. So all the landscaping that's done in the district is part of that. I think that's about, do you have the breakdown? So Tumon landscape maintenance is 466,000. The Tumon and Hagana beach maintenance is 277,000. The island road maintenance is 215. And so, you know, when it came down to we having to focus our resources and prioritize on where to cut, that's the area where we trim from. So I mean, yeah, you could give them the money if they want to do that part of it.
It's either that, or we could have.
But don't call me to cut
very
the,
successful mayor that's on your board who managed to get the road going up the hill fixed. And I'm just wondering whether or not he could work on the Sheraton Road. I know that's not his village, but if he could get Public Works to put as much blacktop down as they did on.
Oh yeah, so as I mentioned in the CIP, I had spoken with Public Works, and they were open to working with us to do the work at a, you know, really a affordable cost to repave that Oka Road. So if we get the funding, we work together with them to make sure the project gets done. So you know, we're happy to step up where we need to step up. If it's getting done somewhere else, that's great with us. But you know, at the end of the day, we because we're the Visitors Bureau, we oftentimes get the complaints first. And so I remember when I first joined the bureau, a lot of times we'd have a destination committee meeting, and they spend the whole committee meeting complaining about this not getting done, there's no lights, there's no street lights. Okay, well, let's get the partners involved to see how they can do that. Well, we don't have the resources to do it.
No, I remember when we were having the
so I mean,
problems,
instead of,
so you guys had to take it over, but
yeah,
just all the different contracts. Why don't I have your oversight chair ask a few questions, and the vice speaker, then the secretary, then the other members. Go.
This is the summary.
Hafaday, good morning, everybody. It's almost afternoon. I want to thank you for being here, and thank GVB, your staff, for all that you guys do. You know, it's been about almost 2 years that I've been the oversight chair, and I get it. I understand what it takes to market Guam, and this I believe it's 26 million that you're requesting. I know it's not enough. If in a perfect world, we know we should be able to give you more, because I realize the competition that Guam faces with the Asian countries, and how much they're putting into their destinations to go after the same markets that we're going after. And so, you know, for me, I know that the speaker has had some very good questions. But I think our discussions really should center on looking at what can we do as a destination to improve our destination, you know, to get these tourists to come to Guam rather than all these other Asian destinations. And so I'm hoping that you know, that's something that the GVB takes on more, is looking at how we can improve the destination as a whole. And also looking at using the partners that you have now to co-market Guam, and to go out there and not just market their properties or their businesses, but to market, to use Guam as the center of their marketing. I know that I've been in talks with Nate and others in the visitor industry about you know, looking at this integrated resort concept, and seeing how we can really use that type of concept to take us to the next level, because it's really stagnant. We're really stagnant if you take a look at what we have as a community. We tried to go out and refinance our hot bond, but I understand that the whole environment for borrowing, even though this was a CIP project, we understand what the environment is. But you know, I think if we you know, center our discussions around that, I think more of our people in the community would understand how important it is really to make investments and to give GVB what it needs. Sure, there are these questions that are being asked about how it's being spent, and that's you know, you would expect that. But you know, overall, I support GVB. I support the amount that you're requesting. I have confidence in the board that the expenditures that are being spent are being scrutinized. But I'm hoping that the discussions could be elevated into what I just spoke about. I'm also looking at the hotel occupancy has been stagnant at 11%. It's been 15%, I believe 15 or 14% was it 13%? Perhaps it's time that we look at increasing, or not increasing, but bringing it to where it was. We heard about how the cost of room rates have increased. Our people that work there are not seeing the increase to their pay or to their benefits as well. So I'm hoping that GVB takes the lead in having those discussions. Okay, so thank you very much.
Yes, I do have a few questions, and thank you for your presentation. It's very helpful, and thank you all for being here. Just to follow up with the senator's question, how would you have those discussions? How would that look like? What would that look like? If the board, is it the board? Somebody would make a proposal, or how do you talk about the destination of Guam and what kind of improvements overall you think Guam should make? Is there a forum for that?
Yeah, we have so I mentioned we have 11 committees. One of them is destination development, and that committee is made up of Monte Mesa is the chair, but we have guys like Dan Swavely, Mike Macchio, Joanne Camacho. Also, we have the Public Works comes, and so these are the kind of committee meetings we have, and people participate. So they have a list of projects that they would like to do. We had presented a list to our oversight about not just it depends on the budget, but not just the projects like cleaning up what we have, like safe sidewalks. We're at that basic level, but we like to, how about things like a beach walk along Ipao Beach, or you could walk along the whole beach, or along Tumon Bay and walk along the beach, or really taking Ipao Beach Park into the next level with fixing up the showers and adding fitness facilities, things like this. So we do have bigger plans to improve the destination. I'm looking at Senator Morrison doing more things in the south, helping to fix up Inarajan more and help with their plans down there. So we do have those discussions, but all of it's based on resources. So the plans are there. We're always happy to share and go into more detail on those plans. What we presented today is kind of, in the current situation of the budget and the finances is kind of where we're at today and what we need to do to maintain what we have, but we like to always do more and increase more. But yeah, we have those specific committees that have those discussions, and then even within that destination development committee, I'll give you an example. Like Dan Swavely, he himself wrote sign laws, and we presented that to Tom Atta to take a look, to Senator Tom Atta to take a look at. So these guys are spending their own personal time trying to improve, as stakeholders, responsible stakeholders, improve our tourism product for our visitors and for our local residents. And then each of the committees is chaired by one of our board members. Then at the board members, they present what happened at the committee, and those minutes are included, and then we have spirited discussions at the board level. So that's basically how the Bureau works. So even with the budget, I know Speaker was mentioning there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of sections, but the nature of GVB is these committees themselves are kind of driving the budget and the priorities. These are the trips we should go on. These are the shows we need to be at. So yes, but we'll provide a summary to the speakers request on those. But yeah, sometimes it is even hard to get a handle on what everyone's doing because everything is so active. I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Yes.
Madam Vice Speaker, if I could just add one thing, and I think maybe the question was, you were the forum, and then Senator Rodriguez was asking, what could you folks do? And I think, maybe I get in trouble for saying this, but it's hard for me to bite my tongue when someone asks a question like that. I think the challenge with Guam as a destination is, gosh, we need to really do a better job taking care of our island. I drove into Teton today, and the grass was overgrown on both sides of the street. It's, quite frankly, it's embarrassing. I have, visitors on a continual basis. We drive through that property on a daily basis. My team does, and it's just, quite frankly, it's disgusting, right? And the pictures Nate and his team showed outside of the Harmon Loop Road, the grass overgrown in the middle of a main roadway. I know that the Public Works team has, I mean, they're strapped for resources and they're doing as much as they can all over the place. But if we can find a way to make sure that, basic things get done, the roadway in front of the mall, I mean, there's a lot of construction, but, somehow the weeds find a way to grow in those medians. And that is, I mean, if we're working on repeat visitors, the housekeeping, the cleanliness type stuff, we really need to do a better job. It's amazing what roadside cleanups do and what we're picking up on the sides of the streets. And I think to a certain extent, some of the campaigns that Nate and his team do to make sure that people take island cleanliness and preserving our community and our culture and all of the different things that are important to people, I think that those will go a long way towards helping us. But I think, funding other agencies like Public Works and the Department of Parks and Recreation, I think will help in our proposal and our value proposition to the visitors.
All right, thank you. If I can ask some specific questions regarding your presentation. First of all, when BBMR asked all the other agencies to cut their budgets because we were having a fiscal crisis, I just wanted to check, was GVB asked to reduce their budget or not asked, or did they reduce their budget, or are you going to receive your full allotment for 2018?
So just to be prudent.
I know you're not under BBMR.
Yeah,
right.
but just to be prudent, I just told my team, and under the guidance of our board and our treasurers, we just kind of held back 5 to 10% depending on the different budget item, and then just to be prudent and make sure we don't overspend, or if we do get a little bit less as far as the allotments. Our allotments right now are currently up to date, but we have to see through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay, and there was a $1 million increase in FY18 in the marketing for Japan. So do you believe that the impact of that marketing is what you expected?
Yeah, and yes, ma'am. I think definitely, because as I mentioned, when we started this fiscal year, if we didn't have that, and the board went ahead also, and they've been very supportive about supporting Japan. If we didn't have that money, we wouldn't be able to do certain things like the mega fan we did to bring the 400 travel agents and media to Guam right after the North Korea to see everything is safe. We also added more to our charter support and our airline incentives. So those had direct impacts to the arrivals. And yeah, so I think it's going well. And just overall with Japan, my general feeling is we don't have enough seats in the market for the current level of demand. And so it's a good time to talk, with Delta exiting Japan, it kind of opened up doors for other airlines to consider Guam, when one door closes, another door opens. So I'm looking at it as an opportunity, and you can imagine, you could see the growth in the number of seats we've had in Korea and the direct rise in arrivals. There's no reasons that if we had additional seats and they were priced right and Guam was priced right for the Japanese market, it would turn around and grow. That being said, we have to continue to work with our current partners at United as our hometown carrier. They've been here through the many years, but we also need to continue to attract new airline service. And I feel quite confident this year, if we're able to do that, I think we'll start seeing a turnaround in Japan. And that's why I mentioned Japan. There's only so many markets that we have around us that can really provide that volume. One is Japan, one is Korea, another one would be China, but there's no China waiver. If you just look at Saipan, the only 3 markets, those are the 3 markets they have. And so we really need to have a strong Korea and a strong Japan. Otherwise, what is our, and then we're filling it in with some of the other markets, diversifying with Philippines, Taiwan, China, a little bit of Russia. But you're never going to have, with the visa issues, we're never going to have, 500,000 Filipino visitors, right? Really, Japan, Korea, and China are the 3 most priority markets for us as far as future growth. So we could say, okay, let's not spend on, well, what are we going to replace it with? There's no other option.
All right, so in FY18, that was $1 million more for marketing Japan, and then in FY19, if I understand this correctly, it's going to be an additional $1 million more for marketing Japan.
750,000, ma'am.
Okay, 750, and as you described, it's going to go towards increasing seat capacity, right?
Yes.
All right, and so we saw that. And the speaker had asked questions about your increase in your administration division. Well, it looks like under contractual, there's different items listed. We don't have a specific breakdown, but just general categories. And then under the miscellaneous, again, there are general categories. And so I would ask that if you just break down the contractual also. So contractual and miscellaneous, I think he had requested that the miscellaneous be broken out because they seem similar. And I'm curious why some of the items under miscellaneous are not in contractual. Are those one-time type contracts or not? But I think if you provide a list, maybe it'll be more obvious.
Yeah, we can provide that list. I'm looking at a summary now. Instead of going through it, we'll provide it to the
okay, great. Thanks.
Speaker and Vice Speaker.
And then so it looks to me that there's this also an additional $60,000 in travel under the administration division. And this is for the Director of Finance and Administration to go to your different market offices like Korea, Japan, Taiwan. Yeah. That's new?
Yeah, our controller, our director of marketing of finance would visit the offices and do audits on those different markets. And so she's been doing it for Japan, and then she's looking at expanding to as Korea budget grows and some of the other markets. But I think with the we will resubmit our admin because we are cutting that 200, that 200,000 increase. So
yes.
That's category.
Are you going to take off the whole $200,000 increase?
Yeah, we're just going to continue to ask for the 3.6. So as Speaker said, I think some of that will come to like the office and building things, kind of putting off those repairs or maintenance off later, and then maybe some of these travel costs will go down as well.
Okay, then just a couple more questions. Just one is, very quickly, what is this special pay? Certain employees get special pay, and what is that for? It's on a separate list. Special pay?
We have our acting director of finance, Lisa. Will.
%?
Hi. The special pay is because based on the pay plan that we're on. So when people max out on the pay plan, they don't get an increment anymore. They get a lump sum based on their evaluation.
Oh, so it's the equivalent of an increment? Or they're above the increment schedule? Is that what you're saying?
No, they don't get an increment.
Okay.
So once they hit the max, they'll stay at that for the rest of the time they're at GVB. So based on their evaluation, they'll get a lump sum payout of 3% or 5%.
Okay, it says here 5% for everyone on this
It's
list, just a few people.
It's 5% for budgeting wise.
Oh.
We budget at 5.
We don't know if everybody's going to get a 3 or a 5. So it's just,
Okay, all right. And then you're reducing, it looks to me like the amount for cultural grants and aids and cultural heritage and community outreach. If you could just explain that. Decrease?
In the cultural grants?
Yes. And the cultural heritage and community outreach. You see that?
Yeah. So just, I guess the committee, I don't see Therese Ariola as our chairman for this committee, but just in general in the community arts and grants and aid, we have now the program, the cultural and sports ambassador program that's separate from this. So that program has been kind of picking up some of the grant requests that we receive for people to travel off island to participate in cultural events. And then part of what I kind of tasked, in the current situation of visitor, trying to get more visitor arrivals and focus our efforts is cultural presentation overseas. As we're trying to get more active with trying to bring more visitors here, kind of with some of the negative effects of the North Korea and their arrival. So I just wanted everyone to really kind of focus on what we do marketing-wise. And that's why I think culturally they beefed up the cultural presentation overseas, so we can be more active and set more people to get more visitors here to kind of recover from kind of this slower performance this year. The second part of this too is also our Guam Chamorro Dance Academy. We really want to kind of expand that program, and we're just seeing massive benefits and measurable benefits from those programs. So we kind of shifted from cultural grants and doing real small, like micro grants, and kind of focusing more on this cultural presentation overseas, which would include us sending cultural practitioners to our trade shows and other events, or participating in those, and then also beefing up our Guam Chamorro Dance Academy. And I think the other thing I want to mention is we're also talking to Senator Rodriguez about, there are also, what we're seeing is more and more pass-through grants. Pass-throughs.
Yes.
So the legislature will appropriate money for specific nonprofits or projects through GVB, and so those have been growing. And so a lot of what we're finding is people that maybe applied for our grant before are just going for the pass-through grant, and so we haven't seen as much application on that. But we're also talking to Senator Rodriguez about maybe working together about maybe establishing some, like we have our grant program, people apply, and then we have a committee review the grants, and then maybe we can just kind of work together with the pass-throughs and come up with a system that would be able to administer those grants as well.
Yeah, we discussed that last year. I was hoping that would be ready this year, or something similar. But
yeah, we just had a meeting.
But I just brought it up because there's a decrease, $25,000 in the Community Development and Cultural Arts Grants and Aid, and then $10,000 in the Event Support, Sponsorship, and Community Outreach. And then when you discuss these dance academies, I see that we're funding quite a bit for those things, for the overseas, you call it, for instructors and for and it's for their travel. So you're going to pay for the instructors to travel to different events. Different areas.
Most of the time it's Master Frank Rabone, and then he has like one or two, like the drummer and guitarist that go with him, and then he conducts the dance academy. So we started with him, I think, under Speaker's time with the dance academy in Japan, and so we've continued this program.
So are you paying anybody to continue those dance academies in Japan, or just from Guam traveling there occasionally?
The dance academies is Master Frank goes and then he trains, but in Japan, the Gumas themselves are.
I thought you're funding those also.
Oh no, they get created themselves. We did provide a grant to one of the Gumas this year, the one I mentioned that performed in Osaka, because they had to bring the 50 people down to the show and stay like 4 days, so just to help with the transportation costs and some of the offset some of the costs. But the Gumas are all self-funded and volunteers.
So all of this funding, because there's some for North America, different occasions, so that's all for people from Guam to travel there to teach. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, and then there was an additional appropriation last year of the unappropriated and unexpended hot surplus funds balance. Is that in addition to these budgeted items? And I just wanted to know what you spent that on. This is hot surplus fund.
The budget only provided for about 23, and then the chairman had a separate bill that he introduced where there was.
We're lobbying for those hot surplus funds, so hopefully soon we'll be able to receive them.
You haven't received them yet?
Not
for
yet.
2018?
No.
Oh, how much do you expect it to be?
That's a good question. I think it would be maybe over $2 million, possibly.
Oh, okay.
We'll see.
All right, these don't include the money that's been set aside for like the Tumon, the repair of the drainage system, the sewer?
Oh no, the
flooding mitigation, right? Not
no,
those
that's the
that were allocated for certain projects.
That's hot bond, something totally different. The hot surplus would be the excess over what was appropriated last year and what was actually collected.
Okay, and so you only expect $2 million.
I think it should be maybe a little bit over $2 million, but
all
we
right.
have yet to get those funds at this time.
All right, and so when you take out the $200,000 from your admin, does that mean the $185 for CIP for the GVB building is also out?
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
ma'am. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you all, Nate and Suzos Masi, to the team for your hard work and dedication. I know that Nate and the board members have talked a lot about, you being out there, boots on the ground, and working long hours over the weekends, and we've seen it. When we attend these events, we really want to thank you so much for your dedication day in and day out to our industry and really making sure that Guam is the best place to live, work, and visit. One thing that I don't think we talk about enough is research. So I'm really glad that Nico is here, and I wanted to ask a little bit about the data, and specifically because I think that research is really the cornerstone of our marketing. I wanted to ask you about the survey questions, and when was the last time we reviewed these survey questions? Do you think that they are really capturing what it is that our visitors are experiencing here and what it is that they want to look forward to, hopefully, if they, are repeat visitors?
Thank you, Senator. So the last time we looked at the questionnaire for the visitor exit survey, which is basically our main tool when we try and profile our different markets, was back in 2016, about maybe the ending of 2016, the beginning of 2017. And we kind of revamped it and started throwing in more questions about, are you experiencing more of the culture? In what ways are you experiencing that culture? But I know even talking with Nate and Tony, we're trying to streamline it a little more to kind of get a general idea, a general number, a general metric, if you will, to kind of place for each market. I know we have the prepaid and the on-island, and that kind of gets, a little misleading, like when you brought up the question with prepaid of airfare and accommodations. So I think it's our job now when we go back and look at this questionnaire that we're going to be doing is to have a set number that everyone can reference that is a pretty good representation of what the impact is. That way we don't have to decide and trying to figure out between what stays on island, what goes out, what never shows up at all. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in terms of streamlining that exit survey, because it's also a very long survey, and we do have to incentivize all the participants that take it. And 350 people a month for each market, at least for Japan and Korea. We really have to make sure that we're asking something pretty accurate when we're looking into it, but at the same time something that doesn't take up too much of their time, where they start giving us answers that may not be correct or accurate. So we did move into things like using an iPad rather than an actual written survey. So there's other efforts that we're doing to streamline this process, and that's what we're looking at now.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to ask about destination development and management, and I know that you've talked, Nate and the team has talked a lot about using our Chamorro culture, and really that's a direct differentiator and what sets us apart from other destinations. Recently we had the Department of Chamorro Affairs and the Guam Museum come in here and talk with us a little bit about their budget, and they mentioned that a lot of tourists who go to the museum are really just looking for the bathroom. And that really bummed me out when I heard that response. So I wanted to ask what GVB and maybe the Department of Chamorro Affairs can do to really maybe merge their efforts and ensure that more tourists go to the museum and include the museum in their travel itineraries. We spent a great deal of our hot bond funding to build this museum, and we want to make sure that in addition to our local visitors, we want to make sure that people who come here from our source markets are getting that kind of education about our very important Chamorro culture.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, and we've had several discussions with DCA most recently about helping them promote Chamorro Village. So yeah, like the speaker mentioned, we do have public outreach, in the theaters and on some of the TV stations. So we offered to do like a TV commercial to promote the night market and help them. So we're waiting for them to come back with the information on things that they can offer. The museum more specifically, we're really happy and proud of the permanent museum exhibit that opened. Right. And I think now that it's open, we can start promoting it. Okay. We kind of, I think, jumped the gun a couple times promoting it to our partners, and then so we kind of pulled back a little bit because it wasn't fully functioning. But now that it's open, I want to have a little bit more deeper discussion and have my team come down, because at the opening, we could see that there wasn't a lot of translation. Everything's in English or Chamorro. So a Japanese person or Korean person, how would they experience the full experience? I was kind of, they said that they're going to have some QR codes, but we got to make sure that we have enough translation services at the museum to target our visitors, because we have, you folks see, we put out, I didn't show this picture, but we have the Guam letters there in front of the museum, and the grass in front of it is all gone because there's so many people taking pictures there. There's so many visitors down here in our capital of Hokkaido. And, that's something else we've been focusing on, is really promoting outside of Tumon. It's one of our Tourism 2020 goals, and I think we've done a good job of getting people to come down. And as I mentioned, Jeff Pleadwell has never seen that much traffic, and I think a big part of that is due to the Korean market.
Right, and I really want to congratulate you on that beautiful mural is it in Arahan Pools?
Yeah,
that was done
thank
over
you
the
to
weekend?
the team from Korea. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, little things like that. People love to jump out of the car and take photos. All of the murals around the island. I know you guys have helped to fund powwow and other kind of art. And,
there's artists on
culture.
Guam right now doing
Right.
staycation kind of promotion. Spraycation, I'm sorry. But they came on their own, but just because they fell in love with Guam
Right.
through some of these other events. So, I think all these things are building on each other,
I also wanted to talk with you a little bit about the silver market. I know in our discussions in the past, we've found that a lot of these people who maybe are retired, they stay for a longer time. A lot of times they travel with their children and their grandchildren, so that's provides a higher yield for us. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit about the concern that maybe some of these visitors might have with regard to healthcare here on Guam, and if maybe we could consider taking what you are already doing with the Korean concierge concept and also helping to promote that for visitors who might be older and might have other healthcare concerns, that we have somebody in language to assist them should something happen to them while they're here on Guam, so that they might be able to provide or connect them with healthcare providers.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think that's a great idea. The visitor concierge program was supposed to be, our ultimate goal was to make it an overall visitor for any visitors, but obviously that's going to take more resources to get language speakers in. We deal in 6 different languages. So, that's why the hope of additional funding would help us expand that program, and I think we could do more for the other markets as well, not just for, we love to do it for Korea, and I think it's helping us, and we'd love to do it for all the other markets as well and expand it. Yeah.
Thank you. What other thing that I wanted to discuss, actually two additional things. In many destinations around the world, I know that public transportation is an important component of their tourism product. And, many of the folks that come to Guam from Korea and from Japan, they come from places with excellent public transportation. So I wanted to talk with you a little bit about maybe if you could share with the committee a percentage of how many tourists are riding buses and trolleys versus how many of them are renting cars, and how we can assist them in kind of getting around the island better.
That's a really good question. I'm going to look at Nico and see if you have
so if
any
you could
data
just provide it to the committee, and then we can take a look at it and
Okay.
see how we might be able to improve on that score. In addition, one of the things that I've kind of been thinking about, and it goes to what the speaker was saying about increasing the minimum wage for folks in our hotel industry and restaurants, is I wanted to ask you to look into this a little bit more and what you think about the lack of adequate busing and public transportation system for our workers who really move our tourism industry forward. And I'm just concerned that maybe not enough opportunity for people to get to their jobs is kind of creating an issue with our tourist district and impacting their productivity. Because when I took the bus a couple months ago, there are so many people that have to get to work at 10 o'clock, so they're on the bus at 7 because they're just not sure if this transportation's so unreliable here that a lot of times they have to get to work many, many hours before their shift just to make sure that they can get there on time. And so that's a major concern for me when you think about, working families and what they have to do to juggle, and the fact that they're taking 3 hours out of their day just to make sure that they get to their work on time. That's a huge issue for us as a community and as a tourism industry. So I just want to ask that you please, I know that you're working with them, that you had conversations with them about bus stops and having them potentially use your new bus stops, but if we can continue those conversations and make sure that we're doing everything we can to really support our local workers. Yeah,
I think just a larger issue that really needs to be looked at, but just a thought I had is, we do have the trolley system, and I don't know if there's an opportunity to tie in with our local community, and why don't locals get to, outsourcing I think is always the best. It always works well when it comes to things, instead of the government managing the buses and all this. We have a trolley system. I don't know if you could work a deal and people could use that trolley system. It might cost a little bit more, but I think, I think we charge about 35% or 35 cents a ride, but I think if people would be willing to pay $1, if that means it's going to get better service. So I think all the things that I don't want to get into this now, but that the senators could look at. But yeah, I think definitely public transportation to help those workers. Those, we're probably having 10,000 workers down in Tumon. As far as the minimum wage and all these things, I just want to note, and I kind of share this with the speaker though, is really right now, if you have training in like culinary, if you're a chef, if you have some language training, you're going to get more than minimum wage when you go down to apply for a job. So I think part of it is, people, and part of it is people improving their skills, because there is a demand for labor. If you don't have enough, the hotels are hiring people from the next hotel. That means that they're going to attract that person with an increase. So I think a lot of that's going on. So I think with more additional training, and I think GCC, they have that lodging management program. It's a really great program, but I think a lot of times it's trying to get people into the program to take advantage. We had a girl who's the banquet director for Lotte. She went through the program. She started in high school and then went on to GCC. She told those kids at Okuru, I didn't have to pay for anything. It was all covered through scholarship. But I think GCC, sometimes I don't think they're turning away people from the program, so we need to get more people in the program. And then I think with those skills, you're not going to be getting minimum wage. So I think, there's two sides of it to it, but I think great point on the public transportation. Yeah.
Thank you. In one of your slides, I'm always looking forward to all of the different sports and events and activities that that GVB is promoting, and it really does help to, as you said, really build our community, and you talked about building our cultural capacity. So it's not just the Cocos Crossing, which my family participated in, as well as United Guam Marathon, but also all of these arts and cultural fairs that we have. I think that our local community really gets a tremendous benefit from these. So I really want to congratulate GVB on great work all around. I know your calendar is packed with all these signature events, and you remain, really busy doing those things. And I certainly appreciate it. I think a lot of people in our community can see the value in that. I wanted to talk with you just in closing about China market. You mentioned two things at the end of your slide. Fliggy, Alipay, and WeChat. So can you tell me a little bit more about those vendors?
Yeah, Pilar, you want to?
Yes, Senator. More and more, Guam is trying to earn a brand reputation in that enormous country of China. And Fliggy, we have gone into a really nice partnership with Fliggy last year to create a product for Guam on their travel distribution channel. And in fact, United has done so as well. And we do a lot of co-op promotions with Fliggy. And we have been able to gain a very sound reputation as a brand product to their clienteles. We are more and more becoming well known in China. We are trying to do more work with OTAs as well, online travel agents such as C-Trip and Tuni. And these companies are very excited, and they all love the Guam product. But it's building the awareness and the packages that we need to in the marketplace. And the signature events we talked about earlier are very key to developing new products for the shelves of the travel agents. And they give a reason why our visitors would like to come here. With China, it's the fastest growing market, and social media is enormous business in China. No one walks around with a wallet in their back pocket. Everyone uses the mobile to pay for everything that they wish to purchase. And so that goes with the travel products as well. So travel is, the consumers are very empowered to do all their research and make all their purchase on their mobile smartphones. And we try to promote our packages that we have with Fliggy or other travel agents and other platforms in China using this method.
Thank you very much. One final thing that I just wanted to mention, and this comes out in conversations that I have with people that I meet, both local and visitors, and they talk with me a little bit about the emerging market in China and how maybe some of our other island neighbors have seen just the change in that market and that source market and also the visitors. And I think one of the things that often comes from these conversations is, they really look at Palau and what Palau has been able to do with regard to environmental preservation and, the Palau Pledge. Anybody that goes there, before they even step foot off the airplane, they have to sign that Palau Pledge. And you've done that before, and, there's a tremendous fee that you have to pay that goes back to their environmental preservation. And so I really want to encourage GVB to continue thinking in those terms, and we want to make sure that it's all part of destination management. It's all part of making sure that this really is our main economic driver. We want to make sure that our visitors and our local community alike has this beautiful island that we continue to enjoy. So I want to thank you for really helping to keep that in the forefront of your minds and all the work that you're doing with destination management and really providing a product that's going to be good for our visitors, but for generations to come. So thank you. Sutosmasi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Denight and GVB team for the presentation. Regarding the capital improvement project request here, I won't go through everything, but something that's always been on my mind is that Kmart intersection area at night. That's when you're talking about lighting and crosswalk surface repairs. Was that lit up before, or am I missing something, or because it's repairing, or is it a whole new installation of lighting and crosswalk? Because I do feel it's really unsafe there.
Yeah, we'd like to, and this is one of the committee's top priorities, really add additional lighting and safety to that crosswalk. We bought some. They have these big hexagon light poles, so we did fund DPW or GPA to buy the adapter to allow some of the poles to have a little bit of additional street light, because it's kind of a different size. So there was a couple of those put in, but it's still, they're kind of far away from the actual crosswalks, and we do see some, crimes against tourists in that area and even locals. So we'd like to improve that area. It's one of our top priorities. So we'd like to add additional crosswalks and maybe some other safety features to that whole intersection.
Okay, thank you. It's a pretty dark area there, and I think all of us know that.
Yeah, and it's a 24-hour.
Kids there, and it bothers me when
it's 24 hours as well, right? So people are there,
right,
really late in the evening. So the more lights for crossing safety, but also just safety from any kinds of people that may be looking to rob tourists.
So this estimate of $1 million for all these projects, does this factor in maintenance, or is this a one-shot capital improvement project? Does it factor in maintenance?
These do not factor in maintenance, but we do have a maintenance, destination maintenance component, and that's where we have like the grass cutting and some of the landscaping. And so one of the things we did is we fixed those lights in Tumon, so we fixed all the street lights. So you would see a street light maintenance factor now into our maintenance budget, because it's like that's the problem. We fix something and then we don't have money to keep it fixed. So we have a 1-year warranty, so we didn't put it into this year's budget. But next year, the lights won't be under warranty, so we'll need to have that maintenance component.
Okay. Moving on to destination maintenance. I think the public should be aware at one point the TAF funded the Department of Parks and Recreation's a portion of its park maintenance and the Ganya pool, but now it's entirely funded by the TAF. And So I just want to point that out. And over time, or just recently, you can look at DPR's budget. And I bring up DPR with GV's budget because we know that the park system is a critical component of the entire experience of Guam. So, you know, our tourists frequent our parks, and there's a lot of historical parks out there that our tourists want to visit and see and learn about their experiences from the cultural aspect. So I think it's very important that we bring up DPR in a sense that GVB has always helped DPR, and we just recently had a budget hearing and looked at their budget breakdown, and now we're seeing if you take the $3.2 million, at least from last year, that was funded from the TAF, and you break that down, funding the total operations, only $50,000 goes to the parks for outsourcing of the park system. So I agree with you, sir, that the destination or the experience and the cleanliness of these parks are not only our roadways, but our park system where our tourists go is very important. So the idea or what we brought up during the discussions with the parks, understanding that GVB or the TAF completely funds the entire operations of DPR, is to look at not trying to fund the entire, I mean, if we had to fund the entire parks maintenance of all our historical parks, and it would cost close to $1 million if you factor in the whole, not only personnel, salaries, benefits, equipment, supplies, it would take that much. So we were asking, how could we take a different direction working with GVB, and not trying to say that we don't need park personnel, because we still do need park patrol officers. I mean, you got the VCOs, right, which is helping a lot in the 2-1 district. But what's very important is we have an understanding what direction to take with the park system, knowing that we now see TAF funding it completely. And how would we work with GVB and DPR to just completely fund the entire park system's maintenance system and working GVB? I mean, I've even brought up the idea that now that TAF is completely funding it, that it possibly makes sense to move DPR and within one of the sections of GVB. I'm not sure if you guys already had that discussion, Jim, but you know, it's very important. It's a critical. You just recently pointed out some of the work you've done, at least in Iran Park. At least as small as that sounds, it's a big. That will have a big impact of at least the look of that park. But I just want to point it out because I am working in DPR. I talked to the chairman already, and to see what it will look like if we were to outsource the entire park system and make sure that that's the direction we take, instead of funding, or there's a lot of attrition taking place at DPR, and it's kind of like a mass exodus with their maintenance division. So it's going to take time to fill all those positions. At one point, I had over 100 personnel there, and practically got a handful of guys there now. So why should we build that section up when we can redirect those resources into outsourcing, like you just mentioned earlier? So I'll work with you, see what comes back from DPR and working GVB. I definitely support looking at these capital outlay projects. We do need safety in our not only for our visitors but our community. I do agree. I was just up there in Derrida. I was just wondering about that whole section there. Pretty soon we could go hunting there in those medians. So it's really overgrown. So, and that's where we have to figure out, not only DPR but even DPW, which is which here. How are we going to handle this whole maintenance system? Like I said, DPR, are we just going to take a new policy direction and completely zero out maintenance? There will be just a management of a contract, and same with DPW. So we have to start not only thinking about that, but making sure it's put into policy. So I'll work with you. I know it looks like a $200,000 cut that basically took this off your contractual list of this area, and it's a very important area. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are about that. I mean, you do work with DPR, you know, and knowing that the TAF funds it completely, should we take that direction? I mean, obviously it's clear that it's 100% funded by the TAF.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I think you bring up some good points. Yeah, I think the DPR mission is critical to, you know, making sure our product is where it needs to be. Yeah, I know in today's society, environment, there's been talks about you know, certain agencies working together or you know, absorbing other agencies. I think you brought the key point is the outsourcing. You know, at GVB we have you know, as I mentioned in our administration, right, our costs are quite low, and we're able to do that through outsourcing. I think this, especially when it comes to maintenance, so you look at the military, they're not cutting their own grass, right? They outsource it. Yes. Because, you know, you get a good price, there's flexibility and accountability involved, and you know, an efficiency of the private sector efficiencies work in that way. You know, I'll give another example. This Destination Management Committee. I don't know if Doris is here. Doris here? No. So Doris not even here, but anyway. But you know, Doris manages you know, these contracts of 1.3 million, right? And then she has a contract, someone to inspect the contracts to make sure that the people are cutting the grass. But you know, it's a staff of 2, right, or doing that work, right, and managing you know, a large, you know, the roads and all these things. So I think there are efficiencies that could be found. Yeah, so I'm happy to work with you and Parks and Rec. You know, definitely the recreation side. I don't know anything about managing sports programs or gyms, but you know, on the park side, I think and we have been speaking with them and seeing how we can collaborate closer. I don't know if, yeah, maybe there's certain parks that make sense that are really tourism parks that could be, you know, and everything needs to be funded, right? I mean, if GVB doesn't have the funds we need, yeah, we're going to be doing a bad job too, because the grass is not going to get cut and all that. So, you know, I know everyone is trying to work within the limited resources, but yeah, I think sounds like you guys are in the right direction, and I agree with the thoughts that you have and how GVB can support that and work together with Parks and Rec. We're always happy to have those discussions and collaborate where we need to. Yeah.
Right. You know, that's pretty much my line of questioning. I've been talking to the chairman about this and the direction we need to take. I've been there, at least in this building, for 6 years, and seeing how the trend is taking, and now knowing that the TAF completely funds practically the park system, it maybe makes sense now that GVB may have to look at that as a part of its mandate in very soon. Understanding that maybe we can yield more out of our tourists, knowing that GVB may make it over it's part of its not only mission but objectives to always upgrade those parks, instead of relying on a entity does not have the personnel to upgrade it. So yes, you're relying on another entity, but that entity, its maintenance department is completely wiped out. So it doesn't make sense. I mean, if you're building the overall experience and relying on an entity that does not have the resources to do it, it makes your job even more challenging if you're trying to improve the overall experience. So I'm just thinking, it was under your jurisdiction, certainly it would be something always part of the package of not only looking at intersection crosswalks, but certainly our parks where our tourists go. So keep that in mind. Thank you.
Just one more. I agree with Mr. Shinohara and the senators that are expressing that it's our burden and challenge. Our biggest challenge is to keep Guam clean. It's to make it look clean so that when they leave, that's what they repeat. How clean it was, and everything is funner and when it's cleaner. But yeah, so we all have to work together to do that. But I just wanted to ask, but in particular regarding preserves, how do the tourists learn what's allowed or not allowed in a preserve, besides that one sign that's sometimes up, near the preserve? For example, Ipao, right? The coral, the management of the coral, and I'm just wondering, is there, I think before, years ago, we used to do these public service, or they were like destination announcements in the airlines when you're arriving, and I think we still see that in Hawaii as to invasive species. They would give us like ads, right, as to why it's so important that everything be inspected so that the invasive species don't arrive there. And I was just wondering, what does GVB, and it's related to the Palau Pledge. It's kind of like also informing our visitors what's very important to us to take care of and how they can help us to do that. If I know I've got a lot of questions. People call me a lot of times about the coral, right? And about the historic properties. And I think it's also related, yeah, to park management in general. But I was just curious, how does GVB, or do you have a budget for that? Does your destination management take care of that type of thing? Can we work better with the airlines to get at least the very critical, teaching moments in before they arrive?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So I think visitor safety and satisfaction would be kind of where that kind of outreach would happen, or at least we develop materials. So what we try to do on the marketing side on our websites, we have safety tips for all the visitors, but that includes about the corals, not touching the corals, not to step and break the corals. So we have like the education, and that's done in Japanese, Korean. So there's a safety tips on the website. More than that, we funded the beach signs in 6 different languages for Ipao, Matapang, and some of the other beaches. So we designed those signs, so you'll see those down at Ipao Beach and Matapang Beach and some of the other beaches. But we could always do more. And one of the interesting topics was, Hawaii was talking. They did legislation to ban sunblock, right, or certain kinds of sunblocks with benzene or something in there. But so our team reached out to UOG and asked them, is this something that we should look at? UOG said they haven't done any specific studies on that, but they did look at other studies that they shared with me. But they said for our oceans, really the warming oceans is really what's causing the bleaching. And yeah, the sunscreen, while not good, great for the coral, we don't have millions of visitors in the bay that would, the sunscreen would leak off and really destroy the coral. Although they do make their own, they'll teach you how to make your own sunscreen. But yeah, so anyway, these are things that we look at, and through visitor safety and satisfaction. I think the other one is the VSOs, the visitor safety officers. So one of them, 2 of them are patrolling the beach, and they go up and down. And so if they've seen people taking coral out of the ocean, so they'll let them know that this is not allowed. So a lot of it is presence, whether that's through lifeguards or people on the beach to help also let the visitors know that this is allowed or not allowed. So that's been another kind of positive of that program. But we like to do more, and we do through our visitor safety committee. We have BSP coastal management is part of that committee, so we see how we can partner together and work closely on some of these things. But you could always be doing more, be more proactive, because really the oceans and our reef, our environment is our top unique selling point. So it's only sustainable if we need to sustain it to keep our visitor industry going.
Thank you. I'm hoping also if you create those ads, we could also use them as education tools for our own community. I think it's very important. And
that's part of what the tourism works.
In addition to saying half a day, they should not step on the coral. They should not break the coral. Things like that. Yes. Yeah. Thanks. Well, thank you. Yeah. And I appreciate all the destination maintenance and management efforts. I think those are key. Thank you very much.
Thank you. As we close out, and this will be my last year to oversee this budget, I at least know I have a job that if the RFP goes out, I can find a position that pays more than is paying me now, and that's that contract. That contract management is 60.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So
it's a lot of work, though, sir.
At least I know what I can apply for. An old man just crawling around and checking. But on 2 other things, and what I wanted to stress, I know I dwelled a lot on the increase in the weighted room rates and how it's gone up. And my concern about not getting, You sat with the chairman when I got castigated trying to increase the minimum wage a couple of years ago. And that hasn't, I've not forgotten that. And the thing is that I have a listing of the average annual salary of hotel workers throughout the country. It's topped with New York at $42,000. The bottom is Puerto Rico at 18, and second from the bottom is Guam, 19. But our weighted room rate has doubled since I had the minimum wage. And I really do think that you need to talk to your boss and you need to talk to your members about the fact that that's not lost on me. And we've got to do something about taking care of the people that keep our industry together. Because if we didn't have those, yes, we should have good cooks and culinary. But if we continue to get survey comments that the rooms are filthy, it doesn't do us any good. I don't, care if how much more we invest in GVB. If all the Google or the social media talks about how bad things are and how dirty the rooms are, we've got to take care of our people that work in the industry. So I'm really hoping that at some point we will have the social conscience to come back and support some kind of living salary for our employees in the hotel industry. The other thing that I want to leave everybody with is, with the weighted room rate going up from 107 to 207. I remember 5 years ago when Customs and Quarantine was trying to increase their landing rate from $8 to $15. And I got major pushback from your predecessor and your predecessor, saying, oh, it's going to make coming here expensive. Well, I hate to point out the fact that the weighted room rate has gone up from, 112 to 207. Now that's why it's expensive to come here. A couple of weeks ago, I had Customs and Quarantine in here because their budget is dependent on the amount of money that they charge for landing fees. 5 years ago, I tried to get them to go from 8 to 15, and I got pushback. So it finally landed at 11. I had a meeting with them here a couple of weeks ago, and I told them I wanted to take it from 11 to 20. And so help me if I get pushback. I will rain terror from up here. Because the safety of the amount of money you're spending on safety and security of your visitors ain't going to be nothing if we become the addicted drug haven of the Pacific. We've got to invest in increasing the landing fee for for Customs and Quarantine so they can double their force. But I need support, and I will not tolerate a pushback. Thank you. We stand in recess until 2 this afternoon when we deal with Office of Technology.